It'll be Robinson, and he finds a running lane. What a sweet move to the second level and beyond. Touchdown, Bijan Robinson.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Pumps it, looking, steps back, in the end zone, touchdown Alabama! Jahmyr Gibbs, what a play by Bryce Young!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
He lets it rip, and Mingo's behind the defense. Goodbye, Jonathan Mingo. Touchdown, Rebels. 71 yards.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
3rd and goal. Looking to tie the game. Oh, they get him. DeMarvion overshown. Comes in like a missile.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Alex, clean pocket to throw down the sideline. He drops it in for Davis down the sideline, and there's nobody home.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Smokey is off today. As you can see, he's not there. No Smokey right there. But Craig and I are here, and lots to talk about. We've got some, there's just some interesting things coming out of Scottsdale, and like just things we can kind of kick around today. Again, nothing concrete after those meetings, but you can kind of start to see, where the possible futures are for everything now. Like it's kind of whittling down the possibilities, I do believe, for the Pac-12 and what's going on and where they could wind up and all of that. But we'll talk about that a lot today. We've got Dennis Dodd to talk about it. He sat down with Smokey earlier today. Then Ross Dellinger, SportsIllustrated.com, will join us to give us his perspective on it. Plus, at 3:45, Grayson Grundhafer of SicEm365.com kind of dives into some recruiting stuff. Baylor's made some quarterback offers, and just kind of want to get his opinion on some other things going around. Craig, how you doing today?
Doing well, Paul.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good, and our co-host John Cena, hope he's doing okay as well. You can't see him, obviously, but he's here with us and taking Smokey's place today. I don't know how much he's going to be talking, though. But, good to be here. And I think you're kind of downplaying a little bit. And I know we have to because we don't want to get like this huge hype train going on. But I would just say that based on just stuff that's starting to float out, that I would not be one of those super smug people that is saying that there is absolutely no chance of anything happening whatsoever. I wouldn't feel great if I was the person who was really pounding home that position right now. And I wouldn't say that to say that there's absolutely something's going to go crazy and all hell's breaking loose. And I just don't think that there's anybody that can say with 100% certainty that anything's going to happen with 100% certainty. And I know that that's kind of been like we've had that reminder and everybody's reminded themselves of that at times, but I've been one of the more pessimistic, I guess you could say, on this. And I'm not going full bore like let's ride on into, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But I'm a little less pessimistic, I guess you could say, on the possibilities of things happening after, what's seemingly going on the last 24 hours or so. You saw those dueling reports, and, we're going to hear from Dennis Dodd, like you said, and Ross Dellinger, who both had those reports. Nicole Auerbach was somebody else that did as well. And there's a lot of he said, she said, and a lot of that going on. You sort through it. But, I wouldn't be confident in the position that Dennis Dodd's a moron and doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll say that.
No, I mean, that's not true at all. And look, there's no benefit to him for
none
for kiting for the Big 12. And there's no benefit for Ross or Nicole for the Pac-12. What I will say is I do think we're at the point, and that's why I didn't want to oversell it or be like, there are some shows you're going to watch on YouTube in particular that'll be like, we've got big, amazing news. I don't think it's that yet. I think we've got indications that we are now to a point where there were, depending on whatever side you're on this, it was still further off in possibility, right? But as we go on and there's no TV deal and people start to get antsy, and you can't let, the thing that the Pac-12 is dealing with is that you can be united, but not everybody's going to look out for themselves, right?
Sure, yeah. So, the Big 12 did that. I mean, if you think about when Oklahoma and Texas left, I think that you didn't hear about it very much because everybody was covert in what they were doing, but everybody was searching around for a life raft. Yeah. And then they realized, oh, crap, there's maybe one life raft for anybody, and that's not even a good one. It's a shark's already bitten into it. It's not even floating well, and so how about we all stick together? And that's kind of what it was. And I think there's a lot of other, expansion talk out there that's good and fun and all of that. I mean, there can be some parts that get a little wonky and crazy, and you're just like, I don't know about that. It just seems like that's a little funky. But I can't speak for everybody, but I know we certainly don't speak out of try to create stuff out of thin air or anything like that. I still believe that the Pac-12 will stay together when all is said and done. But I guess that, as time goes on, even my position on that's just starting to weaken a little bit, if that makes sense, because now it's just, it's getting to a point where, there's all this back and forth and, eventually something's got to give. So we'll see. But, I'm just not my percentages are going down as far as my belief that I've carried throughout most of this thing. But I'm still a believer that it will all, end the way that we expect it to. But I don't know, man. There's that window that's cracked open, and I don't think that that's a fake thing at all that's being talked about in any way, shape, or form.
No, and the thing is you've got 10 schools who have to look out for themselves, and it's not like at the Pac-12 offices there's a wall with a meter where George Kliavkoff can look and see, how confident am I at? How in is Arizona right now? What's Utah feeling this morning? How did they, what happened in the meetings that they had? when they talk amongst themselves, where do the ADs and presidents start to veer as they start to really look and break down the information that's privy really only to them? Mm-hmm. Things can change in so much of a hurry. Sure. Because you don't know, who's in whose ear and what the mood is right now. Now, the best thing for the Pac-12 as it stands is to stick together at this exact moment, but I think we're at the point now where it's not going to take a big gust of wind necessarily to knock some people off track. It might not take that much anymore. I think that you're starting to see this is dragged on enough to where you have to look enough into the, every possible future in the multiverse that can happen, right, and eliminate ones that are ridiculous. And we're now down to to me, a couple of possibilities that you have to kind of decide. And knowing also when you make that decision that nothing is permanent, right? That 3 years into the deal that you make, you could be right back here again, which is, to me, would be another concern. Because if I'm going to make a deal and then have to do this again in 3 years, then I'm going to be like, why am I making this deal if I can make another one right now?
Yeah, I think that's the strength that the Big 12 has, is after what they went through, and like we just got done saying about the life rafts, and they all were swimming around and they realized, our only chance is to all, lock arms and float together, right? Like that's what they all realized, and I think they know that now. And now you brought in Brett Yormark, and you've rallied around him, and you're open to all these new ideas, and you're getting some good publicity. And, some of it, depending on the direction it's coming from, is maybe shots across the bow at the way you're doing it. But regardless, you're getting publicity, and Brett Yormark strikes me as the type of guy that's not looking for any type, but certainly is not going to shy away from most of it, right? So they're certainly being talked about a lot more than they were before, and I know a lot of people call BS on this or that as far as this whole expansion thing. It's not just all speculation, man. This isn't just all bone, no meat. I'm not saying there's a ribeye on the table, but there's not just an empty bone sitting there at the moment. So there is stuff that you can actually chew on that's legitimate. And, I think that at this point, it would be a concern to me that not only does there seem to be like this, I don't know, brother, like I don't want to oversell like the Big 12 and the cohesion and all that, but it's probably as close as it's ever been, right? I mean, It has to be. So I don't know if brotherhood's too strong a word, but
everything's working out for them for the first time and maybe forever.
Right, and they all seem to be okay and happy, and they like the trajectory that they're on, so that there's this cohesion that's there that really wasn't there before, and there's a sense of like, we're going to be okay. Like there's definitely some more mountains to climb, but we're going to be okay, at least for the foreseeable future. And I don't think anybody can really bank on, besides the Big Ten or the SEC, what like 10 years from now is going to look like. But they know that for the next, 5 years or so, they're going to be fine. And I think my concern, if I was a Pac-12 a school or whatever, would be like, okay, if we get this deal, then we get this deal. But it's like, what is that? Like that's why we keep coming back to like, you got to see the deal. Like it's just one thing to say, well, they'll get it, okay, they get it, but like, what does it say? Like, we pointed out the money piece of it so often, and like it would really have to be a down. It really have to see the money drop way down for it to be significant enough, you would think, to move on. But there are other pieces to it, and I think one of those pieces is probably not talked about often enough is the security. Like, I know that 5 years isn't a ton, but it's sure as heck better than the unknown of whatever it is right now. So if you're talking about, hey, we're going to sign a 5-year deal, but nobody's going to be under grant of rights because not everybody's on board with that. Well, don't you think that's a little bit problematic? Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know if that would be the case. But again, is everybody's going to jump on board blindly? No. What do they need? They need to see the deal. Where is it? We don't know. It's still out there. Well, it doesn't end till next year. Okay, fine. They still have time. But you also have to plan ahead, and you have to think about your future. And so I do think that's where a lot of Pac schools are. It's like, we believe in what we're going to get, and it's all well and good, but there are questions about what that's going to look like and the strength of it all. Because what if somebody's like, I don't want to sign a grant of rights? Well, then the whole thing's a house of cards to begin with. And that's what I think the concern would start to be for me if I was like an Oregon State fan or a Cal fan or whoever that's wanting it all to stick together, would just be like, the longer that you do go on, regardless of what the media is saying or whatever, like you still have to have proof in the pudding. And there's been, sure, a lot of talk, but there hasn't been a lot of substance, seemingly. So yeah, that's it's an interesting place where we're at right now. And I do agree that we're at an interesting kind of phase here, and I think others who have their sources or whatever have alluded probably to that, but I feel really good about where we're getting talks from and sort of the stuff that we've heard. And I know that there's a lot of stuff going on in Scottsdale that Ross will be able to fill us in on, and Dennis to an extent as well. It's interesting times, that's for sure.
Look, and to clarify what Dennis said and what he meant, and you'll hear him say this to Smokey here in about 10 minutes or so. One, he did not say that ESPN was completely out. He said that in the meeting, the ESPN, programmer, the administrator, whoever you want to call him, whatever he was, executive, said, according to his source, said that the Big 12 is one of the 3 leagues we're going to be working with. And as that stands right now, today, Cinco de Mayo, 2023.
Hey, Cinco de Mayo. We didn't even start off with that. Come on now. Let's go.
Cinco de Mayo, 2023. That's true, right? They're not working with the Pac-12 right now going forward. Now, could that change? Yes. A lot of things can change in 24 hours or long. I mean, like, it could change. And so when Dennis Dodd put that out, and then you saw the conflicting tweets from Nicole Auerbach and Ross Dellinger, what a Pac-12 person probably said is like, no, the Pac-12 were still talking to them, and we talked to them today, that can also be true. But as it stands, if the ESPN executive in that meeting wasn't lying, and he wasn't also saying this is definitely going to be the case, but they know right now, and they're only planning right now, because they can only plan right now for what they have, not what they might have, is the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. And they also have to they're also preparing for a long-term future for the first time on their network without the Big 10. So they're not going to have them. So they do probably have to double down on some of the things that they have. It would be nice to see the ACC get the same kind of ACC network, get the same kind of buzz that the SEC does, but the teams all got to play better too. But I mean, that's not just all on ESPN for promoting it. Like, you got to, I can promote, like, it'd be like promoting a big movie. It'd be like, you got to go see this. You got to go see this. You're like, it's not good. There's Green Lantern, You don't want to do that. So I think that there are things though. I think the wins are far more unpredictable than maybe they have been for a while, or at least the fact that they could push certain people to a spot, and then, because all it's really going to take is one. If one school gets mad enough to be like, look, we can't do this anymore, and you have enough of the power brokers at that school that say, go ahead and what you think is best, president and AD, then the other 9 being together doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go out and predict like that there's somebody that's going to do that. I don't feel confident in that in any way. That's more or less speculation. But I mean, you're right. Like, all it would take is one crack in the foundation to kind of spread. Perhaps that's how it could work. Or, you have a couple cracks and then you're really in some expensive territory there, or some territory that's going to damage you pretty good. And I don't think that there's necessarily cracks yet. Would that be fair to say?
No.
But I think that there are all of the elements in play.
Yeah, there
to
conditions.
Be a big crack here pretty soon if, like, they don't start to see the ball rolling a bit more and get anything more than just assurances that it's all going to be okay in the end. Yeah, I think that, ultimately we're talking big business and big futures and things like that, and security and money and all the things that are important to the people we're speaking of in these athletic departments and to these universities. Don't get it fooled. Like, yes, there are parts of this that, there are schools that love their academics and they love their fit and all these other things that you've seen or heard or whatever, but don't get it twisted. It doesn't all go back to that for everybody. Don't get it twisted. It does not take over that decision making for everybody. There is athletic concerns that come into play without question, and for some it's probably different than others. But yeah, I think, like you said, with the wins, I think the wins have started to pick up. Let's just say that. I think that's kind of the feeling coming out of these meetings with both sides seemingly, dropping quotes yesterday. Of course, we don't know exactly from where, who, but there's a Big 12 side clearly, and there was a Pac-12 side clearly, or sources on either side, what have you, that spoke, the latest to the reporters, a couple who we're going to talk to today. And, I think that they both were right in so many ways. I think it was wordplay that you could kind of, it's one of those things where, I've said many times in this whole saga of you hear what you want to hear.
It's Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, it's Schrodinger's cat.
Schrodinger's
exactly.
Cat.
So, like I said yesterday, if you're a Big 12 fan, when you heard that Big 12 side of the story, you're like, yep, they're screwed. And then if you were a Pac-12 fan, you're like, see, Dodd's full of it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I explained to the one guy, I was like, well, you're a Pac-12 fan. You want to believe that Dodd's full of it. But guess what? He's not full of it. Like, he's not just throwing out lies. So, yeah, Schrodinger's cat. And that's where we remain, where people are probably going to believe what they want to believe. But I don't know. I feel like we've all on this show, I feel like, been pretty neutral, considering that, we are in Big 12 country, but none of us have ever once been rooting for the demise of the Pac-12. I know that others have, and that's their right. We certainly haven't gone that direction, but that doesn't preclude any of us from just calling it what it is. And I think based on just reading tea leaves and smelling the smoke and whatnot, there's a lot going on, and depends on how things unfold here in the next days and weeks. I know that's not breaking any news, but I do think there's there's a finish line coming here somewhere sooner rather than later. I know that's very vague in general, but I don't know how else to really put it. Look, there's some smoke. Let's say that.
Here's the thing. One of the things that we haven't even talked about is maybe all this tension makes the Pac-12 finally sit down and agree to something that's been proposed to them. Because
Perhaps,
because we can't
we can't do this anymore.
Can't do this anymore.
I'm starting to finally understand it. Like when the Big 12 presidents or when the Big 12 officials, whoever was in on the decision decided, like, you know what, we're not even going to go in the market and explore. We're just going to sign our deal and we're going to be happy on ESPN and Fox. And yeah, we could probably make some more money, but we're not even worried about it. We just want to be on ESPN and Fox. We want to be secure. Turned out to be a brilliant decision. Now, could everybody have made like maybe a couple million more per team? Perhaps, but I think in hindsight that's the right decision that was made, and I do think that just having that security is a real thing. Like it's a warm feeling to have. Whereas the longer you go without it, I do think that starts to create some. I don't know. I do think that starts to apply a certain type of pressure that can become concerning the longer that it balloons and grows.
Yeah, I think. When you look at all the possibilities that could have happened to the Big 12, the best thing that Brett Yormark has done is when he and whoever his economic advisory council was also looked out into the winds and said, look, we can make this deal now, or we can run the risk of, because we're in a very turbulent economic period in America right now. So if we can get it before it gets like super crazy and these are things that none of us know all that much about. I mean, some people might here in the chat room, but us in this room, I don't know what the Fed's going to do, but I do know that most every time the Fed comes out and says something, it's not great news. Right, so and then that has the trickle down effect of like, okay, well, when big multi-billion-dollar companies have to make decisions based on all these things that are going on all around them, it's probably best to just be secure to where you can be like, look, we're doing this. They got a raise too. Like, so they got a raise, maybe not the raise that they could have had, but then again, there's going to be a lot more changes in the wind, not only economically because everything is cyclical, right? And then when you talk about the 12-team playoff coming up, nobody really knows how that's going to work out exactly. We can all have ideas, but when the 12-team playoff comes up for 2 years, I do think you're going to see a lot of scrambling, or not scrambling, but like resetting of what your goals are as institutions, or here's how we get there. And especially if, and I hope this happened just for the glory of it, that, the 10th seed wins a couple games.
Be nice. I don't know how much of an odds there are, but it'd be nice.
But that would, if that happens, and again, I do think you're seeing, there's still some separation at the top where the best 5 or 6 programs are going to kind of hoard everybody.
Right.
But with the transfer portal and playing time and the immediacy of everything right now, that is starting to balance out. We saw it, completely on display in basketball this year. And the reason we saw
what TCU getting to the national championship.
TCU national championship. So in this year, you see TCU national championship, and you see what happened in the Final Four, and it can happen. It'll happen faster in basketball because you don't, you can turn over a roster really quickly in basketball. Football maybe
in
takes
basketball you don't have like 10
Yeah.
positions that you have an advantage on, at the field on any given time, like with the defensive line in some conferences or the offensive line versus, the offerings in other conferences. So you automatically have this massive advantage over a school, whereas like you might have a better center, but hey, you can play around that a little bit, or at least attempt to. But if you got like 7 future NFLers on one side, well, that's a little harder than just getting around the big man and trying to find your way. But yeah, it's going to be, I think a situation where this continues to play out for a little while, but it does feel like, there's starting to be some winding down of it for everybody's sake. Or I guess the point, I kind of lost my train of thought. Something about when the Big 12 made their deal. But, I do think the Pac-12 guys have to be like suddenly getting a little bit like, what the heck's going on? And where's the deal? And they would like that security as well. And that the longer it does go on, that it does lead to maybe a fracturing of the belief or just a little bit of uneasiness. And as you said, all it takes is 1 or 2, and then all of a sudden the whole thing's a little bit shaky. We're not obviously reporting that there's anything like official or anything like that, to be very clear. But I see there's other speculation out there, and I know that, just based on the tea leaves that we've read over the last 24 hours, that there's definitely not a position that I would feel comfortable in saying 100% there's absolutely nothing that's going to change and this is never going to happen. You idiots, quit with your stupid tweets and whatever stupid names you want to call somebody. Call them names all you want to, but I'd be, treading lightly at the moment if I were people that want to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, when we come back, hear it from the man himself, Dennis Dodd, CBSSports.com, breaks down what he heard in Scottsdale, why he reported what he reported, and what the future might be bringing with David Smoak. That comes up next. This is 365 Sports.
It's the season to shop our large selection at Allen Samuels in Waco and find the vehicle that's right for you. Get amazing deals on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler minivans, or a sporty Dodge. Shop AllenSamuelsDCJ.com or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
It's time to announce the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars Team honoring elite student-athletes in Greater Central Texas. Hi, this is David Smoak. We annually recognize student-athletes who thrive and succeed in both academic and athletic competition. And here are the male All-Stars, including Preston Batts from Wortham, Teague's Anthony DiMaselli, Mason Kirk from China Spring, Itasca's Cade Lightsey, Whitney's Canyon Massengill, Stefan Nickerson of La Vega, Xavier Payne from Ellison, Reeve Tarter from Midway, Troy's Nathan Westbrook, and Riesel's Grady Wilson.
The 2022-23 Academic All-Star Team is brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, Westdale Asset Management, Southwest Sports Medicine, Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, HEB, the McLean Group, Universal Windows Direct, the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Center, Alliance Bank, Ray Broker AC, Hal Whitaker and Louis Englander Scholarship Fund, IdealMRI.com, Bubba's 33, the Baylor Club, and our 501c3, the Waco Foundation.
We'll honor the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars Team at our annual banquet Wednesday, May 17th inside the Presidential Suite at McLean Stadium with Baylor assistant basketball coach Bill Peterson, our guest speaker. We're very proud to recognize the elite student-athletes in Greater Central Texas. It's the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars right here on 365 Sports.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd with us, 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak, and Dennis was in Scottsdale, the Big 12, the Pac-12, college athletic directors and much more meeting, and, of course, television networks and executives as well. Dennis, you had a report a couple of days ago about there was a meeting and an ESPN representative mentioned that the Big 12 would be a part of just 3 conferences, or the ESPN would be a part of partnerships with 3 conferences. I've confirmed that same thing myself, not that you needed me to. Were you surprised kind of like by the reaction of everybody going, oh, my God, that's not the case?
No, I mean, look, I got tough skin. I stand by my reporting. Life's too short. I don't need to get into that. I will say that, like what you've probably figured out, when that happened, jaws dropped in that meeting. It was kind of a coded thing in that the ESPN executives didn't say the Pac-12 was out, but it was a process of elimination. And in doing the story, I talked to ESPN people, and so it's vetted that way. So it is kind of surprising. That being said, everything's qualified. It's been 48 hours since that report, and who knows? They could be back in.
Did you sense any, because there was a lot of different groups there, did you sense any of how the Pac-12 ADs or reps compared to the Big 12 ADs and reps? Was there any conversation between the two? Was it in any way awkward or even tense?
None at all. The meetings are at a resort, the Hyatt Danny Ranch, and everybody's kind of just glad to be there in good weather and hanging out by the pool and getting work done at the same time with their wives playing golf. No, there really wasn't any of that at all. In fact, all these guys and women are very collegial. So no, I saw them talking to each other. So there was nothing like that. No.
Do you get the impression that someone or a program from the Pac-12 is already in discussions with the Big 12 in any way?
Oh, they've been discussed. I mean, I reported last July that the 4 corners had had discussions, and there have been face-to-face discussions within that group regarding what we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. So, no, that continues to go on. Look, those Pac-12 schools would not be doing due diligence if they didn't. I mean, it happened in the Big 12 in 2010 when Nebraska and Colorado left. I'm trying to remember what order they left in, but everybody scrambled for the phones. In July of 21, when Texas and Oklahoma, Smoky, you know this, it looked about 2 or 3 weeks there, it looked like the Big 12 was done.
Yep.
And to Bob Bowlesby's credit, he went out and did this, deal with the 4 extra schools really, really quick and got everybody rallied back together. But I think part of the lessons from realignment in 2010 is every man for himself, and when it comes to be desperation time. So, yeah, I would expect that.
So Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, a couple of days ago with the report about ESPN, it appears out of anything with the Pac-12. Did you also mention Tier 1? Does that still leave, you think, the door open for late night on Saturday with, if in fact, let's just say it's Apple Plus, and then they then go to ESPN and say, hey, we're going to give up this time period. How much will you pay?
Yeah, the issue, and the answer is yes. The issue is I don't know what Tier 1 looks like. I did a story earlier this year tracking their highest rated games the past 12 for the last 2 seasons, taking USC and UCLA out. And 4 of the top 5 involve Oregon and or Washington. That makes total sense. But that's 5 games. The rest of it, it's really up to the right total. We'd like these games, and we'll pay X for those. So, yeah, I think, as it was communicated to me, there could still be room for ESPN for a smaller package if it comes to that. We still don't know if what was communicated to the brethren at the Pac-12 this week was they are confident they have a major carrier for their Tier 1 rights. So everybody in the industry kind of going, well, who? they can't figure it out. So is NBC/USA Network one of those? They've got to keep their powder dry for they're doing negotiations for WWE, UFC merger. That's a big property that is coming on their radar that they want. And how much money do they have left after that? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I had somebody yesterday bring up USA Network, and I think they have the WWE. Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned that, but also NASCAR, and they're really early in their season, basically, since they don't start until early February with the Daytona 500.
Yeah, and those, I mean, frankly, are bigger than what the Pac-12 is right now, and that's part of the issue right now is that for the first time that I can remember in this kind of realignment merry-go-round since 2010, we all started really covering it, with the Pac-12, Big 12, what have you. There's a Power 5 conference that they get on television, but there's not a rights holder that needs them on television. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whoever gets them doesn't need the Pac-12. Because we know that now, because if they did, they'd have a deal. I mean, that's 2 plus 2.
Dennis,
so what does that mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you obviously have reported quite a bit on this, and and we have, and others have. Have you ever had a Pac-12 AD reach out to you and try to pick your brain or say, hey, wait a minute, this is not right?
I had one apologize to me this week, for ripping me on Twitter, and that's okay. I have thick skin. I don't, I can sense their frustration, the league frustration with trying to get something done, and it has become kind of a, it has sucked all the oxygen out of the room for a conference that's, by the way, really, really good football this year. I had 6 teams ranked in my post-spring top 25. They've got the reigning Heisman winner. Even though it's USC, Caleb Williams, and they're going to leave, they're still in the league. Michael Penix Jr. of Washington is right there. And, for a league that's been out of the playoffs since, 2015, they got a heck of a chance to be back in. But that's not the first thing you think of when you talk about the Pac-12, and that's unfortunate.
Do you think there might be something sooner rather than later? Not on the TV deal with the Pac-12, because that does appear to be still maybe down the road. Do you see any way, shape, or form something that might pop involving somebody from the Pac-12 and the Big 12? And I don't want to use the word imminent, but do you see that possibly happening somewhat soon?
I don't think I do, because there's 2 ways this could go. Well, there's one way this could go. First, the Pac-12 gets a deal. Okay, and I do think they'll get one. Breaking up is a strong word, especially since the Big Ten appears not to have any interest in Oregon and Washington. I think they'll get some sort of deal. Then, is it good enough? And do teams get nervous? Do they get within, how close do they get the Pac-12 within that 31.7 million number that the Big 12 has? Then do they do anything? And then, because the Pac-12 needs a deal first, then do they expand? Or do they have to expand? And that's another level to this. And that's a whole process. So I don't see anything imminent. In other words, you have to get one before you expand, I believe. You saw the remark from the San Diego State AD Sunday, I think, in The Athletic, where it was a story by Seth Davis about San Diego State's success in basketball. Midway through the story, the AD said, well, it's going to be one or the other, Pac-12 or Big 12. Everybody got noticed that. And it was accurate. I checked it. It wasn't, I was checking to see if it had been mentioned offhand. He didn't mean to say it. Nope, absolutely meant to say it. So, you've got that. So I think there's some steps here, and I don't, Would I be surprised if we get a news dump at 5 o'clock today? No, because that's college athletics. But I think it's going to be a while. Yeah.
You're right. I have never seen. Yeah, you mentioned the Texas OU, and you and I, we were on a couple of different times, and we were very heavily involved, fortunately, because of connections of what was going to happen after Bowlesby in the conference was basically all but knocked out. But they've been through this like they have a cat of nine lives when it comes to this. Have you ever seen anything as, for example, lingering as this one is with the Pac-12 in the time you've covered college athletics?
No, and they're making the case that, first of all, I should say, officially the conference is sticking to its guns and saying late spring, early summer for a deal. Now they've kicked this can down the road enough times, but we'll see. Have I ever seen this? No, because the Pac-12 keeps saying, well, the Big Ten waited until less than a year before their deal, and it's not even apples to apples. It's the Big Ten. The news had just broken that they were adding USC and UCLA. The deal was way down the road. They had to integrate those two schools into the deal real quick before announcing it. But this is what we just said. There doesn't appear to be a deal imminent. The conference is not in a position with leverage. There's a lot of mystery involved in it. And yes, so now they're July 1st, 2024, their deal expires. So we're getting close to being inside a year on that. And there's a lot that has to be done if and when they do a deal, schedules, everything else. So, no, I haven't seen anything like this in a Power 5.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, and I mentioned this again. Dennis doesn't need me to do this, but I myself also was told last night that there was a meeting with the ESPN representative during the meeting with the ADs and whoever else was there about the fact that they were going to be a part of 3 conference partnerships, and obviously the ACC, SEC locked up, and the Big 12 is too. So whatever that might mean, who knows? And like you said, we could wake up on Monday or Tuesday and go, wow, something else has happened because it is so fluid. And Dennis, thanks for your time. Appreciate you very much. Be safe on the road, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, Smokey, thanks.
Thank you. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports on 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with Grayson Grundhafer of SicEm365.com. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
Grayson Grundhafer, SicEm365.com. Also, this segment on Baylor Athletics brought to you by Richard Carr Motors. Grayson, Baylor, before we get into some of the offers, look, the transfer portal is closed for students, athletes to jump into it, but it's not closed for people to commit. Do you sense any movement on the horizon for Baylor in picking up players that they may need?
Right. So, we've talked about this a little bit, Paul, just the amount of spots that Baylor may have to utilize with the transfer portal. And after the 2 additions so far this spring with Byron Bonds and Trevin Maya, you're kind of looking at a situation where I believe they have 1 spot left. And the position that I've been kind of mentioning a ton on this show as well as on our premium side, it just seems like cornerback is the position that they're really, really focused on. They actually have a visitor in town this weekend. Actually, I believe he should be starting his visit like right now or within the next 30 minutes or so. But Utah State cornerback Ajani Carter, he was the guy who got a Baylor offer very early in the process. He took a visit to Indiana this week, and then he's at Baylor this weekend. And I believe he should be making his decision after this trip, likely between those 2 schools. So that'll be something to definitely keep an eye on. I think if he did choose Baylor, I think that would fill up Baylor's roster spots, and I think they would be done with the transfer portal. But you are exactly right. Guys can't enter the portal now as long as they're not grad transfers. The rules for grad transfers are a little bit different, but you can enter the portal currently if you're a player, but you can absolutely pick up commitments, and guys don't necessarily need to make decisions really for the next month. You would think that most guys would want to decide before June because in June, obviously, you're going to go enroll at whatever school you choose for that first summer 1 session. So that's kind of the timeline I'd say in the next month. But for Baylor, I think things could probably be decided in the next week.
So, Grayson, what is the connection, if any, to Utah State? What's the appeal for, not only Byron Bonds, but perhaps another player as well? I know Dave Aranda coached there long ago, so it can't be, like that connection like he just left there or anything. But is there anything in particular, or is that just a program that happens to just be a coincidence?
It's actually all about getting back to Texas, Craig. Both the guys, so Byron Bonds played in Texas in high school, and then obviously went to Texas. And then Ajani Carter also played football in high school in Texas as well. So really it's just, pretty much about coming back home, somewhere closer to home where their families can see them. The travel's not as extensive. And so, I think it's more so about that than necessarily the Utah State connection.
Grayson, now some quarterback offers going out as they focus, 2024, 2025 right now?
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of been it's so interesting, right? Because they've been putting out multiple 2025 quarterback offers, but then you look at the 2024 class and they haven't offered anyone since missing on Haas Haney and Deuce Adams to TCU and Louisville, respectively. And now they're really just taking their time with the 2024 class to try to figure out who they want to offer. They have a few guys on their radar, a few guys who visited campus and guys who Sean Bell has visited over the last few weeks as the coaches have been on the road. So they're still trying to make a decision there, it seems like, for the 2024 class. But yeah, in 2025, they've put out a couple offers, offered one that I really, really like out of Johnson, a high school down there in San Antonio, Ty Hawkins. He was the MVP of his district, had just a massive sophomore season, over 3,000 yards of total offense, 37 touchdowns. At a program that's really not one that everyone thinks of as being a powerhouse in San Antonio. He was really, really good there. So he's a new offer. They're still looking at more 2025 quarterbacks as well, as I think they're trying to get out ahead of things in that class, maybe more so than they did in the 2024 class in particular. But that's mostly because the 2025 class, as far as quarterbacks in the state of Texas, is really, really good, and one that I think Baylor will have a lot of success landing one of the top quarterbacks in the state.
So we had a little bit of a discussion about this yesterday. We had to be careful to let people know that we were just speculating and there wasn't anything to report. And there's still nothing to report on Baylor's starting quarterback position or decision or whatever. But now we're, about 2 weeks removed from the spring game, and the semester will be winding down here pretty soon. I doubt that they would, pop open a graphic in like mid-June, because I don't just, it seems like it wouldn't be the ideal time if you're looking for attention. But how do you read the tea leaves when it comes to the fact that they have not named a starting quarterback, and what does that say, if anything, to you?
It's a really weird situation, because I think when Dave Aranda made those comments after the spring game, everyone just kind of anticipated a decision coming really quickly, honestly, within the next week. And it never came, and now it's kind of dragging out a little bit. And, to me, that leads me to believe that they're pushing the decision back to the fall, which I think is the smart decision. I don't really see a need to rush naming a quarterback. You might as well keep the competition open. Both guys, I think, should have an opportunity in the fall to win that job. But on the flip side, if they saw something, which it seems like Dave Aranda felt like he saw something in one of these two quarterbacks to make a decision, then I guess you go ahead and do it. But yeah, you're right. The further this drags out, the less likely it is, especially once you reach the end of the semester. It'd be hard for me to believe that Baylor would go ahead and just throw up a graphic and name a starting quarterback. So I do think as of right now, my expectation is this is pushed to the fall. But honestly, back when he said that we're going to potentially name a quarterback, I really felt like they were going to do that. So it's a very puzzling situation, but maybe one that we'll get more clarity on when fall camp rolls around.
Yeah, Grayson, also we talked about, like, this is a different situation than a year ago when they made the decision with Blake and Gary, because had they made the decision earlier and just say it was Sawyer, hypothetically, then they only have one scholarship quarterback if history played out the exact same way. So they weren't in the same position to do the same thing while the portal was still open.
For sure. And I think what people kind of forget from that decision was, Gary, I think they felt like the way Gary had been around the program for a while, the way that he handled and conducted himself, the fact that he was technically a graduate transfer as well. I think all of that played a huge role in kind of that decision by the staff. And then also, they had Kyron Drones on the roster as well. So you had another scholarship quarterback there just in case something happened to Blake Shapen. So, two totally different situations. I don't think this is a situation where they were like, hey, we want to make sure that both these guys are here, so that's why we're not going to make a decision. I really don't think it was that. But I could see how someone could convince themselves that it was.
What else is kind of on the radar for you right now, Grayson?
I think actually this past week, a big thing that everyone's been trying to figure out is actually the basketball side of things, because Yves Misty decided to reclassify to the 2023 class. He ended up signing with Baylor, and that was a big story. that we, released earlier this week. So that's been a huge one because everyone's trying to figure out, what's this Baylor basketball roster going to look like? How are they going to, handle things as Adam Flagler and Jalen Bridges test the NBA waters? How does the staff try to figure out ways to add players to the roster that don't necessarily show that they're moving on from those two guys that they really, really want back on the roster for next season. So yeah, basketball's been a big part of it. Recruiting, obviously, that never stops. But currently right now, it's kind of one of those phases where we're just kind of waiting on the June official visit. So right now, a lot of this is the coaches on the road, players trying to figure out their schedules as far as official visits go. And then Baylor trying to figure out, who's coming on the official visits, who are the priorities that we need to get on official visits. Those type of things are kind of dominating the headlines right now.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was just pouring through, just like Googling Baylor, and I see this very panicky all caps headlines from, they're very dramatic. Are you from another place about like the transfer portal and lack of activity? Are you on like a certain high level of anxiety as far as that goes as well, or are you confident that they're okay and the roster's going to shape up just fine?
Craig, are you talking about the basketball or the football side? Because basketball, okay, yeah. Because people have been panicking on the football side as well.
And they've added like 12 guys.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, you're right. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
12.
But yeah, you're right. On the basketball side of things, though, I don't get why people are panicking right now. And this was actually something that I brought up on the website that I think for all college basketball fans and all Baylor fans specifically need to remember that, yes, Adam Flagler and Jalen Bridges are testing the NBA waters, but there are also a ton of other guys that are testing the NBA waters as well. So when people say, oh, the transfer portal is watering down, you're missing out on top targets, well, not really, because there's a lot of guys that are testing the NBA waters, and then if they do decide to return to college, they might be transferring from their current school. So I guess my line of thinking is, even if Flagler and Bridges stay in the draft, I do think there's going to be some very, very high quality guys that Baylor could land, specifically because you're game to sell like, hey, we just lost Adam Flagler and Jalen Bridges. Both guys played over 30 minutes a game. So why don't you come to Baylor and get to play 30 minutes per game on a top 10, potentially top 10 college basketball team? That's very, very enticing to a lot of guys. And so I really wouldn't panic at all. Baylor just got another big, adding Yves Misty, so they have another 7-footer on the roster, which was something they really needed last year. So now it's really just about rounding things out with a couple more starters, whether it's Flagler and Bridges or 2 transfer guys that could come in and start right away. So, yeah, I wouldn't panic. If you're a Baylor fan panicking, I really wouldn't right now because I think Scott Drew and the staff really have a good handle on the pulse of things right now.
Yeah, you got to trust the guy who's been pretty darn consistent here lately. Maybe they forgot what happened 2 years ago. But, Grayson, also, I would think, and this is maybe being too optimistic, but just based on what we know of the 2 guys in the portal and and where they are, I would say at worst 50% of those guys are, gone. And that one of them is probably coming back.
For
basketball, for Jalen Bridges and Adam Flagler. I would say that at least one of them is going to be back.
I would say that I think Bridges is probably the one that I would put the higher percentage on coming back, just because I do think if he did come back, there's a case to be made that he could end up being a first-round pick, which I don't think he would be at this point. Flagler is a little bit different because I don't think his draft stock is going to change in a year. But then on the flip side, it's like, do you just want to go to the NBA, potentially just be in the G League for a while? Or do you want to come back and have a chance to not end your career with a round of 32 exit and in your career with a possible championship with a team that's really, really good? That's just going to be an interesting question and an interesting conundrum for him because he has been in college for a long time. But I think you're right. I think there's a great chance that at least one of them comes back. But I still think I'd probably put the percentage right around 50% that both come back as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Grayson. I think that, pessimistically, I don't see. I mean, this is my most pessimistic. I just don't see them both going. at this point in their careers. Now, and I completely agree with what you said. Flagler, older guy, why not just try out the pros right now if that's what you are, where you are personally in your growth. All right, Grayson, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Grayson Grunhead for SicEm365.com. Next, Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated joins us to talk about the goings-on in Scottsdale, his perspective on all of it. We had Dennis Dodd earlier. We'll have Ross Dellinger now, so you'll get both sides of that news right here on 365 Sports.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Dozens of 2023 Buicks are on the lot and priced to move at Richard Carr Buick. A prestigious luxury SUV without the luxury price. Experience the quiet escape and premium drive of a Buick SUV on a test drive today at Richard Carr. Right now, qualified buyers get a 2023 Buick Encore GX at 3.9% for 60 months, plus save $1,000 dealer discount or save $3,500 on a 2023 Buick Enclave Avenir in stock. See dealer for details.
Count on us, a dealer to trust. Richard Carr in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, joins us now, and Ross has been in Scottsdale. Never a bad place to be, but working hard and breaking news as he always does. Ross, I would think that when you go there and you're kind of in the midst of it, do you get more clarity or less clarity on what's going on with the Pac-12?
Well, there's an argument to be made that you get less clarity. There are a lot of things swirling there. You've got a lot of sides to this. Obviously, you've got the network side, multiple networks involved. You've got obviously the Pac-12, and you've got the conference trying to poach Pac-12 members, the Big 12. So you got all these different parties to this situation, and it can get pretty cloudy. And all those parties were there, and so you can sometimes get a better idea by talking to all of them, but sometimes you can also confuse yourself by talking to them. So it's a murky situation, and honestly, it's a situation that I've tried my best to stay away from because there's so many parties involved, there's so many agendas involved, and there's so much unknown by everyone except really the commission of the Pac-12 maybe, and his executive presidents, and maybe a network executive or two. So you're talking about 5 to 7 people.
So Ross, I mean, you're right. It's such a weird and a fluid thing, and it just depends on, I think, a lot of times what people want to believe. So, like, whether it's this report or that report, like this is what fits their narrative, and that's what they want to believe. But just in general, for the crowd that says there is nothing to this, this is all a bunch of baloney and fake headlines and all that. Do you feel like this is blown out of proportion, or do you feel like this is something that, while it's nothing imminent, there is cause for concern, if you will, for certain parties?
Well, certainly the Pac-12 thought it would be done quicker than this, sooner than this. They thought this process probably would go a little quicker. I mean, they were gearing up at one point to announce a deal the week of the football championship, and that's the first week of December. You're talking about 5-6 months ago. And then there was, reports, and I think some presidents actually came out publicly and said it, that they would announce a deal at the end of March, maybe at their conference basketball tournament mid-March. So those things just never happened, and now I think it's the deadline kind of shifts now again, and I think it's probably by the end of June, maybe my media days, which is in mid to late July. So this is definitely concerning at how delayed and how that timeline continues to push and push. And I think that timeline continues to push for a variety of reasons. One, the Big 12 got to the market first, and they got their deal done. It's a credit to Brett Yormark, who has been incredibly progressive, aggressive, in creative. He has. He's come in, and he's kind of others in the college sports world would call him a disruptor. He comes in, he shakes up things, brings kind of new ideas. Deion Sanders, I think, in the coaching level would kind of be classified as that as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's certainly, the Pac-12 certainly has some concerns. He's talking to a Pac-12 athletic director who preached cohesion, and all 10 of us are together, we support each other. And then he finished the conversation by saying, but I'm getting a little tired of waiting.
Yeah, that's
always that's the pesky butt.
Yeah, that's the razor's edge they're walking on now, because Ross, it really only takes one school to say, I'm sick of this, and then chaos ensues.
Yeah, that's usually how realignment stuff works, right? It's usually one or two schools create a domino. In this situation, that's never been truer. You've got a league that's fairly unstable, a league that it's two of its top 3 kind of most valuable properties will be gone after next year. USC and UCLA, in its biggest market, LA, will be gone next year. So it's about, I think, estimates are around 30 to 40% of the overall value of the conference. Some would say even more than that. So your 2 big dogs are gone, and that leaves you at a really susceptible position where if you have 1 or 2 more gone, you might see, a possibility of a complete collapse. And that's where they got to hold everybody together, right? It's very important.
Ross, just what sense do you get? And I'm not trying to I know that there's other things that you wrote about that are very interesting that I'd like to touch on as well, because there's a very busy week outside of just that one report, or that report on the Pac-12 and the Big 12. But what kind of sense do you get just sort of looking as a guy who's very thorough around the entire landscape? Yes, this Pac-12 thing is going to eventually end, but does that mean a period of peace and calm, or do you feel like everybody's as agitated and nervous as ever, save for, those who have an ironclad future like a Big Ten or an SEC?
Well, I don't know that anything will be stable these days, no matter what. But certainly after the Pac-12 deal gets, I think you have two lanes here, so to speak. You have one lane is the Pac-12 gets a deal done that is suitable for its members, and it remains at 10, probably adds one or two more, so any other state, maybe SMU. And so that's one lane, and everybody, the Mountain West, I don't know that the Mountain West is going to scramble to really replace one team. I don't know that the American will scramble. In this lane, there's not going to be a lot of dominoes. UNC Conference USA add a team or two. It may be the American, but there won't be a lot of dominoes in that lane. It'll be more stable. Lane 2 is, somewhat chaotic because lane 2 would be the Pac-12 deal isn't suitable for its members. And 2 to 4 of them go to the Big 12, and then 2 to 4 of them go to the Big 10, probably at a lesser share because they will be somewhat in desperation mode. And then you have basically around 4 or 5 schools left that go their own way and maybe independence for some, maybe it's down to the Mountain West for others. And then once that all would happen, and this is all obviously speculative, but if the Big Ten is going to grow, does the SEC grow? And does anybody out east challenge the grant of rights in the ACC, which is in a kind of a cruddy situation? So all of that I just described is certainly speculative, but all of it is, I think, a possibility. And if it's not a possibility this year, given the Pac-12 deal, if it's not as suitable and it starts breaking apart, then I'm going to tell you this thing that I just laid out, it's going to happen. It's just, is it going to happen the next, in this year, or is it going to happen in 6 to 8 years, or is it going to happen in 14 to 15 years? Because it's going to happen. I think Jack Swarbrick at Notre Dame AD has said multiple times the current situation in college sports where you have 2 leagues, the SEC and the Big Ten, so far money-wise above the rest, it can't continue down the path. So you're going to see more and more consolidation.
Ross, some of the other things that were going on is, you talked about the Big 12 and how they've, want to modernize the broadcast of the football games, in-game interviews and all that. How do you think the coaches will take that?
Well, they're a tough lot to convince, but if anybody's going to convince them, or just tell them what they're doing, it is Brett Yormark. And I think that was discussed at length in the coaches and ADs joint conference meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday in Phoenix, Scottsdale. And so, I think they're going to move forward with those plans. They have to talk to the network. There are a lot of I's that need dotted and T's crossed, but it's a cool idea. And it's one, I should say, that isn't necessarily revolutionary. I think that you're going to see college football playoff games have a lot of this stuff. You're going to see maybe other conferences jump aboard as well. But it was discussed at length in the Big 12, and it's something, Yormark and I talked about this actually in Scottsdale. It's something that probably should have happened with college football years ago. And sometimes it takes somebody from the outside to come in and do it.
What are your thoughts on the layout of the college football playoff that we got a glimpse of this past week?
Well, it's exciting. For the people who don't agree on the playoff and are against the expanded playoff, every other NCAA sport that the association sponsors, softball, baseball, hockey, etc., usually has in its postseason. It usually includes about 10 to up to 20% of its overall teams are included in the postseason. And for years and years, football has been at 1%, and then with the expanded 14 playoff, it's at 3%. And that number just needs to rise. And so now with the 12-team playoff, it's at that 9 to 10% range, and that's certainly more suitable and makes a lot more sense, and will give a lot more programs and conferences, leagues a better shot. And I should say this plays into realignment as well. The six highest ranked conference champions get an automatic entry into the playoff, and those top four conference champions get buys. So again, if you're what we were just talking about, if you're in the Pac-12 and you're Washington or Oregon, with a Pac-12 that's without USC and UCLA, why would you want to go to the Big Ten? Well, money. But the second thing is, you got to think about championships. And I think, gosh, there's so much of an opportunity to do that in the Pac-12 than the Big Ten. And maybe the same for some of those schools like Colorado and Arizona. They have a better shot in the Pac-12 too, really, than they might in the Big 12. So that's something that everybody has to think about as well.
Ross, I'm of the belief that after the first 2 years of the college football playoff, we'll see, I don't want to say a major shakeup, but you'll see a big shift in the way that teams are approaching how they get there once they figure out kind of what the shortest cut is. Don't you think?
You mean like as far as scheduling?
Like scheduling, the way they approach kind of the way they expectations, the way they maybe start funneling NIL money more into things, all of that.
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot from those first 2 years. It's going to show us a lot, and schools are going to learn. And what we're going to see probably beyond the first 2 years in the future is a revenue distribution model that is going to be it's going to be more about merit. The CFP distributes to each conference a certain amount of money. It's kind of an equal distribution. You get a little more here and there if you have more teams make the playoff. We're going to see the equal distribution go a little more unequal, and we'll probably see more distribution based on how far and how many teams a conference has in the playoff. So it's something to keep in mind. That's just more money you can do those things like NIL and all that other stuff with. And then scheduling is going to be important. You saw really 4 to 6 years ago, teams start to schedule differently, a little more difficult, right? They're adding more Power 5 non-conference games. They're adding more conference games. So you're seeing that already change, and it'll keep changing in the future. It'll keep evolving as they figure this thing out.
So Ross, I guess there's the constant realignment talk. There's Brett Yormark and just what all he's up to. There's there's no shortage of things. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you think is like a major point of discussion for college athletics right now, or is that pretty much the gamut? Besides the overall existential crisis that they've continued to face for the last few years with the government and whatnot.
Well, I think the new NCAA president Charlie Baker and what his future plan is for the NCAA and the survival of the association is certainly interesting. And he was up here. I live in D.C. and he was up here last week back on the Hill, meeting with lawmakers, trying to get a congressional bill passed that will more standardize and regulate and maybe enforce NIL. And that's certainly a big topic. And if they get that congressional bill, I think it'll probably might even save the NCAA as an association. If they don't, then there's certainly issues going forward.
Yeah, I don't hold my breath when it comes to Congress ever, Ross.
Yeah, don't do that.
No. Ross Dellinger, SportsIllustrated.com. Ross, thanks so much. I hope you did you get some time to at least kick back and enjoy Scottsdale a bit, or were you just riding and working the whole time?
I got in my pool, my Airbnb pool, for about 20 minutes. That's about it.
Well, I hope it was 20 glorious minutes, Ross. Thanks for hopping on as always. Love to have you.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, Ross Dellinger, SportsIllustrated.com. Yeah, he was, you get out there, you're Ross, you're Nicole Auerbach, you're Dennis Dodd, you think this is going to be a fun trip because Scottsdale's great.
Yeah,
it's great. We've been out there. Craig, Garrett and I were just there with Smokey and Jacob, and yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. But you start getting into it, and you're like, I have not enjoyed any of this.
Oh no, I think some work trips. I think anybody who's got work trips, whether it's radio stuff or whatever you may be doing. Yeah, I'm going to Chicago. Oh, that's going to be awesome. Well, I'm in a convention center for 23 of the 24 hours every day. But no, yeah, did you see the Sears Tower? It's not even the Sears Tower anymore.
Hancock Building?
Yeah, no, I actually, driving to the airport, I saw that. That's typically how work trips would often go. But yeah, if you can get a little extra time, that's always good too.
The only thing you can probably guarantee you can do is at least get to one legendary restaurant.
Yeah,
You'll
check something off.
Yeah, check something off. But if you were, if you go to New York, did you go to the 9/11 memorial? I was around it.
Yeah, saw the top of it from 15 blocks away or something.
So you don't get to. But yeah, it was a bummer. It's especially since for the thing is for the media, it's just all busy. For the ADs and the presidents and everything, they bring their families and they go play golf, and that's how that's where some of these deals and things get done. It's we're gonna go play golf, and then on the 19th hole, they're all right, here's what we're gonna do, and then they move on. As where the reporters like Ross in the middle of that are sitting in their Airbnb pool and then get a text well, that's it.
Yeah, or they're even when they're schmoozing, which I don't mean in a bad way, but clearly, a cocktail party or something, and there's news going on, you're still, the conversations you're having are often work-related, right? They're still circling back to the exact same thing that you're trying to probably relax from. So, yeah, it's never ending, and I'd say for Ross in general, work trip or not, he seems like he's always breaking some story or on top of some other story. If it's not, the NCAA and Charlie Baker, it's realignment. If it's not that, it's the SEC schedule and them trying to figure out how they're going to work that thing, as that's been a topic that's continued on about how many games, how's that going to work, and who plays who, and all those types of answers that they're still in search of. So yeah, it's just there, and that's why I asked him just what are we missing potentially, because there's so much that could fall through the cracks. You're so focused on one or two other things, but yeah, the whole NIL passage of a law that could save the NCAA. That's pretty huge. I mean, that's pretty gigantic. That's just sort of oh, yeah, there's that too. So we know Linda Livingstone from Baylor's heavily involved with the whole side of that battle. And I think to have a little clarity there, that would in no way cap anybody. It's not like you're suddenly ripping the money away, but just to have it to where everybody's playing by the same set of rules is, I think, what really it's all anybody's really asked for, quite frankly. And I don't know how much would be cleared up by that, but it does sound like it would be a massive, swing in the right direction potentially, or in the wrong direction, which could lead you to just further proof that this whole thing's going a different path than we've ever seen before, and that's a little bit of the unknown right now, because it's on the same path currently, but man, there's all sorts. It's like we talk about with the realignment stuff. It's probably gonna be around. It's probably gonna. You keep thinking that, but enough things start to pick up around. You're like, oh boy, this doesn't go right, then that could be the dissolution of that, and that means that this happens, and that could, it's crazy world in college athletics right now.
Yeah, and college athletics is just trying to figure out their economics. And I know, I'm not trying to take the side of the big bad wolf,
that's made all the money for all these years. Yeah,
but I do think that you can't have either without both sides, right?
Right. You have to have each other.
So you have to have each other. So I'm all for making it work for that way it works out the best for both sides, and finding something in the middle. And to me, finding some sort of NIL, here's what it is, and here's what you have to do, and here's what needs to be disclosed or not disclosed, or on down the line, this is allowed, that's not allowed, these are the rules, would be very helpful, because I don't think it's really going to hurt student athletes all that much. It's just going to, again, funnel them into the system a little bit better. But the problem is, when you're asking for regulation in government, you have several different sides of it, but there's really three sides. There are over-regulators, under-regulators, and then people who
lawlessness,
who don't, like libertarians who like, why do we have to deal with this? There doesn't need to be any government oversight in any of this. Let's just get rid of it. And unfortunately, I labeled three. Did I say regulators, like people who just figure out how to do it right? That's not really a common thing when it comes to especially national government. So when you're asking for somebody like, can you write us reasonable regulations? I would put this out to anybody. If you're in an industry that's regulated by the government, tell me how often you feel like what they're doing is reasonable on either side of it. It's either completely unreasonably reckless or completely unreasonably, overwrought with things. So it's going to be a longer process than them just going there and asking. So, just look at, and just to put it mildly, clean water in most states, it's getting harder and harder to figure out. And that's way more important than if you can get money for an Instagram post.
Yeah.
So, like those things.
It's not the highest of priorities.
Exactly.
For sure.
So, anyway, when we come back, I want your thoughts on what you've heard from Dennis Dodd and from Ross Dellinger on what lies ahead. We'll go into the chat room a little bit on the text line, 254-339-1122. This is 365 Sports.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It's time to announce the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars team honoring elite student athletes in Greater Central Texas. Hi, this is David Smoak. We annually recognize student athletes who thrive and succeed in both academic and athletic competition. And here are the female All-Stars: Karis Dietrich Axtell, Talia Gibbs from Killeen, Julia Cosda from West, Ellie Mesher from Salado, Hubbard's Jenna Morris, Crawford's McKenna Post, Iredell Sierra Potter, Ivory Scott from Waco High, Grace Stalker of Abbott, and Kelsey Wettegrove from Clifton.
The 2022-23 Academic All-Star Team is brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, Westdale Asset Management, Southwest Sports Medicine, Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, HEB, The McLean Group, Universal Windows Direct, the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Center, Alliance Bank, Ray Broker AC, Hal Whitaker and Louis Englander Scholarship Fund, IdealMRI.com, Bubba's 33, the Baylor Club, and our 501c3, the Waco Foundation.
We'll honor the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars team at our annual banquet Wednesday, May 17th inside the Presidential Suite at McLean Stadium with Baylor assistant basketball coach Bill Peterson, our guest speaker. We're very proud to recognize the elite student athletes in Greater Central Texas. It's the 13th Annual Academic All-Stars right here on 365 Sports.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
This is 365 Sports. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Everybody in the studio just wildly concerned about Jack McKenzie today. I won't tell anybody why. We just are.
I'm not concerned about you, Jack.
But anyway, getting back in to, we had Dennis Dodd, we had Ross Dellinger, and I think like I asked Ross, do you have more clarity, less clarity? And he's like, yeah, as you wind through it. But as you heard on what they reported and what they heard and what's going on, like we are getting down to those points like we talked about earlier of like, there are not too many paths forward, Craig. As where further out, there's more. The closer you get to the deadlines, like there are only a couple things that are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are a couple things that have sort of been harped on this entire time, it's all going to depend, on a couple of different factors. So we wait. But I'll say what I said at the beginning of the show for those just joining us definitely not predicting anything or moving off my position that I think that, everything kind of stays as is. But I do feel like for the first time after just kind of taking in things this week, I'm not cemented to that position.
No,
I'll say that, and I'm not and I never really was. I was never of the belief like nothing's going on. Like nothing. I absolutely believe things are going on. Like just not 24/7. Every single day of the week, like it could be depending on where you look. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's 3:00 in the morning. Is the Colorado AD really reaching out to the Tech AD? And like, why do you know that at 3:00?
Yeah.
Like there's some stuff like that. I'm just like, I don't know, man. That's kind of hard to believe, but okay. But there's enough out there that it's at this point, it's a situation where I guess if I had to lay down my odds, I'd start to take a little bit away from the pile of, no, everything's going to just be okay. I'm starting to, I don't want to say like hedge my bets or anything like that, but I still believe that everything's going to work out for them in the end. I think, though, they're cutting it very close, and I think they're playing with fire. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily think that the fire part of it was really all that concerning, maybe even a week ago. And this isn't for clicks or views or whatever, that kind of crap. Don't ever even think about that. But I do feel like they're getting close to burning themselves if they're not careful with how they kind of operate here over the immediate future. And I don't think I've really said that before. So is there reason to panic? No. But is there reason for concern? I think so. Or we're getting awfully, awfully close to it. Would it be fair to say that there's nothing immediate that's happening? Yeah, probably. But would it be right to say that absolutely nothing, no chance? No, that's BS. I don't buy that. I don't care who they claim to talk to or whatever. I don't buy that for 1 second.
Yeah, no, and there are like old school like benchmarks, metrics where I don't think you would say normally, well, they're not going to do this because they, this is important or that important. I do think we are at the point where if someone gets pushed just to that right thing, they're going to say, damn the torpedoes.
It could very well happen. Yep.
That's what I think. And whether that is a totally rational decision or not.
Right. That's a different question.
That's the different question, because
because to me, this whole thing, I've been looking at it I'm very rational, right?
Yeah.
And I've been looking at it in a very rational way.
But you don't have to make the decision.
But I don't have to make the decision.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here like a month ago, we're talking about this, and there's the talk about how it was when the Pac-12, side of things started to have their 3 or 4 days in the sun, right? You had Arizona's guy and Arizona State's guy, or whoever was talking, Utah's guy, Colorado's guy, all coming out at various points. And I forget the exact order and whether it was 80s presidents. That's all very confusing now at this stage. But a lot of that, I was like, it's part of the deal and it's pushback, and I understand it and pretty rational about it. But I just really didn't understand of why are they so worried about the media? If it's not true, then why are you freaking out? Why is everybody acting like the house is burning down? If you're telling me that you're looking out the back window and everything's fine, then why are you so worried about people obviously lying or whatever? And I just didn't get it. But, I understand there's the media game that can be played, but it's just hard for me. It's I guess somebody getting in your ear and telling you Craig and them or blah, blah, blah. And then you talk to me. I'm like, no, dude, we're all good. And I don't know, but there's just enough of a seed, I guess, that's planted sometimes that can get into people's heads where even who you would think would be the most rational, well thought out, unconcerned people at a university presidential or athletic director level, they aren't quite as smart as we maybe think sometimes, or as untouchable, if that makes sense, or they're not bulletproof to rumors and things like that, and they can be susceptible to them far more than you maybe realize. And that's me not, I guess, that's me being too rational, thinking if it was me, if I was the Arizona State president, I'd be like, buzz off, what are y'all talking about? But I'm not them hearing all these different things from various angles, and enough of that, and I can see where again, that seed's put in your head, and as much as it looks like the water's calm or whatever, there's that little party going, I don't know, that water, is that a ripple? Is that a wave coming? And you start to maybe, outthink yourself or react maybe differently than you would think you would. I don't know.
Well, and the other thing is it's really hard to read the room of your alumni and student body and all that together, right? When you are the university president and the AD who, when you start hearing from your own fans a lot, what about the Big 12? 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 And then you start to think, is this a good idea? Because
I guess so, yeah.
Because everybody, every time we talk to the fans,
every time I log on to Twitter, that's all my mentions.
They want to know if we're considering the Big 12 because they seem to want it. So then you have to go, do we have to see if this is a good decision because our fan base wants it and do that? Those are things that are just, it's hard to even follow, right? So I don't know how people are, some university presidents, and I say this being here and having been through quite a bit of them in my time. The only one I considered stable at all, and this is no disrespect to Kent Starr, but I just kind of always felt like, just based on his career, that he was either going to retire in a couple of years or go somewhere else, even when things were good for him, is Linda Livingstone. And even that, she's on such an ascendancy, I don't know how long Baylor can keep her before somebody bowls her over with another offer.
That could very well have to do with whatever happens with the NCAA moving forward.
Exactly.
I mean, if they die off, which, Ross was just talking about, that could hinge on some decisions made, here in the near future, in regards to, the NIL and the government decisions and those types of things. I mean, if they were to cease to become what they are now, then, maybe that's not in her cards at that point, and she's doesn't have a lot of other things she would pivot to. But yeah, I think we'd be foolish to not think that if they thrive and they get their NIL decision the way that it satisfies everybody, and they continue to be a foundational piece of just the college athletics landscape, then I could see them, with the way that she's been used and put out in front, as a higher up there or president one day. could certainly see that. Now, there's no indication of that happening anytime soon. But sure, she could move on. I don't think she's a Baylor lifer, many of these people in any industries are necessarily lifers where they are.
And the jobs are shorter and shorter. When I was in college, the guy who was the president, we were his last, I think one of his last graduating classes. His name was Sandy Dallenbert, and he'd been in that job for a very long time. But now, I don't think it's, look, E. Gordon Gee's been at Ohio State and West Virginia. They move around a little bit more. Things are a lot more fluid. So, again, what your decision you make is probably not the one you're going to have to deal with a decade from now, just based on it. So those all factor into all this. But I say that all to say about, stability of presidents and the way they do things is that some presidents care immensely about what their student body and alumni say. And the others can completely shut it out and do what they think they have to do, what is best for the school, and then see through maybe the first wave of we don't like this until they kind of understand what's going on. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong way. I think it's based on the time that you're doing this and the issue that you're dealing with it with. A very small issue here. And Garrett, I don't know if you remember this because it was many years ago, but do you remember when the president of Baylor kind of unilaterally decided to get rid of the interlocking BU?
Vaguely, not enough to really no.
So they had a marketing firm come in.
This sounds like a Baylor drama.
Yeah, definitely.
This is slight change to the logo.
This is such. I mean, there were other things.
I mean that lovingly, but yeah,
there had been. I mean, there were other things that were probably bigger than this, but the straw that broke the camel's back seemingly was this decision. Was that he brought in a marketing firm to give him an assessment on what they could do to improve Baylor's marketability. Like, how will people know us better than they do now? And this is also at a time of the athletic success was basically Kim Mulkey. That was it. Like, she had just won. And so he was on the heels of that going, okay, well, how can people find out about us now? Football wasn't good yet. Bryles wasn't here, I don't think, or he was maybe just about to be. So there was none of that, but one of the things they said was, listen, you need to get rid of the interlocking BU on the helmet, and it needs to say Baylor, because people don't know what BU means.
Terrible decision.
So he, instead of going, I like some of these other ideas, this one I'm going to ditch, he kind of went with it and said, we're going to get rid of the interlocking BU, and it's going to say Baylor, and we're going to have a great new logo, and people were like, the hell you are. And that was the thing that, like, then every other, like, tiny mistake he made was like, oh, we don't like this either. And we don't like that either, because that's all it takes is that kind of decision. And
Mac Rhodes, if the moment he does something wrong, just believe there's going to be the people lined up that are still pissed about Kim Mulkey or pissed about whatever other thing they might be pissed about, for sure. Yeah, that can add up over time. I was thinking, I can actually understand that complaint about the logo. I think that would have been a terrible decision to do that, but I was thinking more along the lines of, like, they were, throwing their arms up over, like, whether it should be, beveled or not. And I feel that's kind of a slight.
No, it was a big, but like.
No, but yeah, having Baylor spelled out across the helmet versus the B, I do think that's actually kind of a big deal I'd be upset about.
But when we talked about it at the time, I said, look, from all of your perspective, who believe he's wrong, and he was wrong to do that, you're right. You're right. But I'm telling you, from his perspective, when he's done and sitting in his office packing up his stuff, he's going to think, this all happened to me because of a sticker. Like, that's what he's going to think, because that's what it did. And it can be that kind of a little thing, is that you make the wrong decision, and a big one. I'm not saying it wasn't, but ultimately it came down to stickers that go on helmets. That's what undid them. So it is a tightrope to walk when you are the university president and have to make these decisions. And as they get bigger and bigger, like, what conference are going to be in, what is going to make the thing, and maybe the only thing that brings me joy better, and you have to make that decision and look across hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and tell them, this is the thing that you love, the thing that you spend your money on, the thing that you wear T-shirts for, the thing that you are most passionate about. I am part of this decision that's going to either improve or ruin the thing that you love. And when the tide starts to turn a different way, you may not be able to be completely practical, because you kind of have to ride with what's going to make your fans happy. So it's a hard gig. And I wonder what different fan bases are really on certain spots. And we might not even be to that point yet, but it is going to, that's where the buzz and the Twitter and all that to me is more important than what some people may report of like, oh, this happened, this school's meeting with that. It's that when your actual fans, the constituency of your university starts to turn largely in one way, then you're kind of in a pickle.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's a tough job, but they're well compensated for it. So there's at least that part of it. You get paid well to make the tough decisions, at least at this level you do. But, yeah, I mean, I think you have to consider, obviously, your fans and how they feel about things, whether that's uniform. I mean, you need to listen to them because sometimes, yeah, they're going to be right. I don't know how that plays into, the decisions or the conversations going on behind the scenes right now as far as conference affiliation, other than I know that, Utah fans, for example, have been very emphatic, the ones that I've seen at least, that they have no interest in doing anything other than being in the Pac-12 unless a Big Ten offer were to come, which that's not seemingly likely at this point. But, yeah, I mean, you have to consider that. You have to consider a variety of factors, and I'd imagine that's what they're all doing right now. But I think the one thing they'd love to consider the most is a deal in front of them so they could consider that and consider signing that and consider ending all this madness. But to go back to the very beginning, that's the part that we're all still just sort of sitting here and wondering about, them more than anybody, but us just as outside observers, curious as to how this could spill into other, lanes, potentially the Big 12's lane, potentially, whoever else is. We're all just sitting here as observers. Yeah, those folks in charge are having to make the decisions. And so, yeah, I do, Paul, think there's some pressure from the fans, but I also think there's pressure just from the position and the history of the university that probably drowns out some of like whatever knee-jerk reaction somebody has on social media.
Yeah, you can't always. Sometimes what the people think they want is not what they really want.
No, yeah. I mean, I do think there's probably some of that going on right now. Mm-hmm. I do think there's probably a fan of Arizona who's like, yeah, screw the Pac, let's get out of here. Maybe that's not the right thing, or vice versa, or whatever. There's maybe a Colorado fan that's like, no, we need to stay here forever, when the better decision might be to go somewhere else. I don't know. Like, I'm not the one making those decisions, obviously. Again, the decisions will be made when there's a decision to be made. Right now, that's not the case. It's all very much still just wait-and-see mode type of a thing. But to those curious of, like, why are you talking? It's because there's definitely a feel that's building that this isn't, again, something that's imminent. But, I mean, this isn't nothing. This isn't nothing. And I think most people have started to realize that. But, for all of the, it's just BS and just throwing crap and there's no chance and all these stupid nicknames you want to dole out to people, like, all right. I mean, you can believe that all you want to, but all right, we'll see how it works out.
In honor of Star Wars Day yesterday, and I hope Jack can help me nerd out on this one, only a Sith deals in absolutes. So, yeah, there's nothing that's absolute. There's nothing.
No. And that's all I think we've tried to say the entire time is, like, not to I mean, we've let a lot of the voices who are the reporting side of things report things, and we pass along things that we've heard as well that we know come from trusted people, but we've not tried to just throw, like, just complete random, like, what'll really set the people off today? Like, let's report that, like, we've never done any of that, but, again, have remained pretty level about it all, and I just think for the first time, I'm like, yeah, you better be prepared if you think that there's just like nothing but smooth sailing. It does feel like the waters are getting choppier. There's a storm that is potentially on the horizon. It's still a little bit of a ways away, but it's not just going to clear up without some sort of action. And that's going to have to come at some point. Maybe the storm's a few months away. That'd be a hell of a storm to see it all that far, a hell of a horizon, I mean. But I'm not good at analogies and things like that. No. But There's clouds brewing, man, and those are legit. Those aren't fictitious. Those aren't made up by Twitter people or whatever, nickname you want to give and all that kind of stuff that people are just trying to ruffle feathers. No, there's real storm clouds, and the Pac can sail around them or sail through them or whatever, but, they're going to have to band together, and I don't know at the moment that's like just 100% a surefire thing.
No, I don't either. And I will assure you, if you watch this channel at all, listen to us, whatever, follow us on Twitter, we as an organizational policy only break news when we know it's going to happen. Like we're not ever going to say breaking news on something that maybe is going to happen in the future.
No.
It is either happened or we know for sure it's about to, because it is way easier to deal with being right than deal with being wrong. And
it's just the right thing to do.
Right
like I said earlier, I don't care about clicks and followers and all that. I'll go 2 weeks without a single tweet. I don't care about any of that crap. I really don't. So I'm not trying to be the next Stephen A. or anything up here. Just having fun talking college football. So it's not, what's going to get 100,000? No, but yeah. So anyways,
what we're interested in is giving you perspective.
Yeah, and it probably need to take a break here, but yeah, I just saying that there's not nothing to this whole thing. It's not just some big grand scheme to ruffle feathers or to undermine anything. There's legitimacy to a lot of the talk out there about just the lack of a deal and how time going by could create some things that some people thought a month ago were never, ever going to possibly happen. 0% chance. I'm saying there's not a 0% chance. There's more than a 0% chance that the things in play could occur, but not reporting that they're imminent by any means. Just that the Pac-12 needs to tread lightly, I think is the best way to put it, and be mindful of the situation that they're in.
Yeah. By the way, one thing before we do go to break, Ryan Martin on the text line, how interesting is it to you that Mark Harlan called Dennis and apologized for calling him out on Twitter? I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think it's good. I mean, it's good. Like, sometimes, again, the emotions get the better of us, right?
Sure.
And you do things. Twitter is a world that...
That happened, though?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he mentioned in the interview that...
okay.
Yeah. So that he called, he called him and said, look, I'm sorry for calling you out. So
I thought that was something on Twitter. I must have had my headphones off when he mentioned that.
Yeah,
so cool. I need to go back and listen to that.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting that he said that. And look, because again, social media, Twitter, Facebook in particular, are designed to, they're coded in a way that they want you to respond emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I think there's a lot of good people on there. And sometimes it gets too bad of a rap, but you're right.
But even the best people can get caught up in it.
I mean, when you're him and you're in this position where I can only imagine how messy his mentions are.
Yeah.
When he pops open Twitter, and if I were an AD, I'd be like Mac Rhodes. I'd have my ghost account that I wouldn't ever plug. I would just have it so I could look, and that would be it. You would never know it was me. You'd never see me post or anything. But I understand others do it to promote, and that's smart too. I don't think there's anything wrong either way.
And I don't think if Mac Rhodes looks at it, it's only to monitor what's going on in his school.
Yeah, to see what's the latest on.
Doesn't matter what we say or whatever,
right? But I think also if you're Mark Harlan and you're probably constantly being hit over the head with these things, and all you're trying to do is do the best for your university and for your conference and hold the ship. And meanwhile, people are seemingly, from probably your point of view, trying to sabotage it. Even what would you consider your colleagues, right? So I think there's a little bit of that distrust that's just natural, and a little bit of anxiety, and probably a little bit of anger too, that it's just a frustration at the very least. And that's just human, to be in his position where there's all this going on, and to just for a moment be like, you're tired of the BS, right? And you see that wrong tweet at the wrong time, and you're just like, all right, that's it. I got to say something. And, I don't blame anybody for that. I don't think he was calling Dennis a hacker or anything, so it wasn't super personal and an ugly thing to say. But he did what he felt like was right at the time, and I think that's very interesting that he called and, and I guess cooled things off with Dennis, and I think that's very good. And I think, we saw a lot of people, depending on where you look, of not Dennis is a hacker, things like that. I don't think that I would say that about really any of these reporters, and especially not about him. I think that's just your own biases playing in. If you think that he's just throwing stuff out there for the sake of it without any sort of a real backing to it, I think that's a misstep on the part of people who choose to do that. Just like I won't sit there and look at a Canzano or really a Wilner article and go oh, that dude's just making stuff up. his source might be making stuff up or his source might be feeding him something, but I don't think that he as a journalist is sitting there and just throwing out whatever he's fed. But, I'm sure others disagree with that. But that is an interesting note. I didn't have my headphones on to hear that, but that's cool to know that.
Yep. When we come back, some more news and notes around college football. Peyton Thorne has a new place to play, and it's not shocking where he's going. He's going to Auburn. We'll talk about
Spoiler.
that. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Also, DraftKings Sportsbook released their odds over-unders on SEC wins. I want to get Craig's eyes on that and see what he thinks about that. That and a basketball transfer out of the Big 12. This is 365 Sports.
It's the season at Allen Samuels in Waco to find the vehicle that's right for you. Get amazing deals on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler sedans, and minivans, or a sporty Dodge. At Allen Samuels, we're committed to taking care of our customers, and that means having as much new inventory on hand for you to choose from. Of course, if we don't have exactly what you want in stock, we can help you build the custom car, truck, SUV, or van of your dreams. And order it today. Shop Allen Samuels, DCJ.com, or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment, and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, Darren Ross, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter. Remember, Sports tonight on the CW. We'll have that. We'll go in reverse order here, Garrett. We're going to start with Ish Massoud, former Kansas State basketball player, going to Georgetown. Nice get for Georgetown. This is his second transfer. He started at Wake Forest. Didn't think the more minutes were going to come his way. He's a nice player off the bench for K-State, but now he's on his way. And hopefully for his sake, more minutes at Georgetown as their new coaching staff make shape of that roster. Also in transfer portal news,
I saw Jerome Tank congratulating him. That's cool to see. You always love to see that. Just no matter if you go your separate ways, still all love and respect. And I saw that from Tang earlier, just wishing him well. And, good luck to Massoud. And that's going to be a Georgetown program that's one to watch next year with the changes there.
And good luck at school there. It's a fantastic fantastic university.
Get ready.
Yeah, exactly. And Peyton Thorne, Michigan State quarterback, who very surprisingly, apparently to the coaching staff, jumped into the portal this week, is on his way, or last week, on his way to Auburn. This is not a shock. Of the quarterbacks in the portal, you knew that Auburn, Florida, they were going to try to get at some of the best ones. He's probably... he's more accomplished than Tyler Buckner stats-wise. Potential-wise, I don't know, because you're talking about a redshirt senior here. But Peyton Thorne brings some experience to Auburn. He and Robbie Ashford will essentially battle out for the starting job in the fall, and we'll see there. But I would think that he's probably got a leg up, because the fact that they even went for him tells me that how Hugh Freeze feels about his quarterbacks.
Yeah, clearly there was not something completely settled there. Heading out of spring ball, and it was pretty out there that they were one of those teams that's still looking for, at the very minimum, some depth in that quarterback room. But also, somebody come up and grab the starting job if you want to. This is an interesting move. Obviously, there is still going to be some further competition, and Robbie Ashford, and he will duke it out to determine who's going to be eventually, lacing him up for the Tigers as QB1. But this is, I guess, as about as solid of a move as you could expect. I don't get super excited about this, but I do like that he's got tons of experience. He's played in a lot of games. He's played in the Big Ten, thrown for a lot of yards and all of that. So he's not a blank canvas by any means, and somebody with some tools that you can work with, but he's also not somebody necessarily that you're like, all right, that's it, Auburn's winning the West this year. So it's a little bit in the middle for me, hey, you got a guy, you got some issues addressed, but there will probably be some other issues that still remain or come with that, and, we'll see how they navigate those. And who the heck knows, quite frankly, what the next 4 months hold as far as any roster goes. I know there's certain rules and whatnot, but it seems like maybe they've answered their quarterback question for the time being, and we'll see how others now do that as well. But, I'm interested in – not blown away, but it's an interesting move.
Yeah, look, nobody's doing a roster overhaul like Dion is, but especially first. I can't imagine what it'd be like to cover that. Covering recruiting is hard enough.
Well, who's the one guy? Brian Howe? Brian Howe, who we've had on a few times. I don't know what his Twitter follower count. I know I just talked about it. I don't care about that. I don't, but I would imagine his has probably seen some stock rising over the last 2 or 3 months. You think he's probably doubled his following, given the amount of just information pouring out of that program on what seems like a daily basis? It's a lot going on there for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how you can, every transfer is essentially in the water for them, where Baylor has one spot open. So there's maybe a max of 5 guys that are in the water for them realistically right now, maybe more, but they're not going to fill one spot. They're not going to talk to 25 people.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to talk to probably 5 or less at first. And then if they keep getting no's, then you have to keep going on. But if they've got one available and they want a transfer, you're not going to talk to 25 people. Colorado has 50 scholarships available right now. So they need to talk to at least 100 people. If not more, they're in the portal. And so the more, you're going to catch fish, and they're going to fill the roster.
100 guys out there to
but
go.
Are they worth it? They might get 10 guys who are going to make them better, and then they should be trading out people this first year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of theories on how it's going to work. I'm just going to be boring and rational and just let it play out here these next few weeks and see what that roster eventually looks like, because it's way too incomplete to really have any sort of a real opinion on what to expect. There's just far too many questions at the moment. But it's exciting if you're a Colorado fan. I mean, it's been kind of ho-hum around there for the last little bit, and you have some juice flowing through that program, and it's a very unique brand that they're sipping on right now that could potentially be the next wave and big cool thing in college football, or it could be a disastrous mess when all is said and done. There's just as much of a chance one way or the other, depending on how they again rework the roster and perform this season and moving forward. But Brian Howell's been very busy, as a lot of other Colorado Buffaloes reporters, but I would think that makes it exciting for the fans, because we see it like guys into the transfer portal, and there might be those occasional guys that you're bummed about. You're like, oh man, you see a little bit of an outpouring of like, oh shoot, I wish that Michael would have stayed or whatever. But most of the time you're like, all right, see ya, who's next? And so they're getting like 50 doses of who's next coming off of a season where the guys who are leaving, for the most part, are people that seem like they're ready to let him go. I know there's been a couple, though, that are like, no, those are actually guys that wasn't a Dion thing, that was a them thing, and that might be a little bit of a loss. But yeah, it's been rapid fire and just craziness out there. I can't even imagine.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, Garrett.
So Peyton Thorne, I would be curious to know, like, was he going to win the Michigan State starting job?
I mean, I think that was starting to come into question.
I guess so.
Noah
go ahead and make that jump.
Yeah, Noah Kim had kind of closed the gap on him.
So I'd assume he's got more of a sure thing now. With that in mind.
Yeah, I would think so. But it was, I mean, according to reports, the coaching staff was a little bit surprised that he decided to do it. So, and that might be an NIL thing.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's it's any number of possibilities, I suppose. But I knew that he was in the race for that. So I guess, maybe you got an indication, or maybe it didn't matter. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered if they were like, no, dude, you're 51-49 in the lead right now. He just felt like, nope, it'd be better to go to Auburn and probably be the starter there and make some NIL money and play for Hugh Freeze, who's a great quarterbacks coach, great offensive mind. So, yeah, that's an interesting move. But I guess both Alabama and Auburn, got guys, but it's not at all what you probably at the outset thought they were going to end up landing, either one of them. I think most people probably had these grand ideas of like, they're going to get some massive, like, huge name and not quite, but, guys who can win some games for you in Tyler Buckner and Peyton Thorne. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. So Garrett, I also sent you Big 12 on this as well. Okay. So these are from DraftKings, and I did lift these graphics from On3 and then Heartland College Sports on Twitter, because I didn't have time to make them, and I don't know how to do that anyway. But this.
Well, shout out to On3, thank you, and Heartland College Sports.
But they took these numbers from DraftKings themselves.
Sure,
so per DraftKings Sportsbook, these are the win totals for the teams in the SEC next season, and a couple things hop out to me. A&M right there in 8-4 land, as they always are. Florida at 5.5. I'm going to kick them up a little bit. Auburn, who we just talked about, at 6.5, because there's just so much at those two schools that are uncertain. Mississippi State, even though they return a quarterback and a lot of players, new coach, not Mike Leach, at 6.5. Kentucky, I'm going to say more than that, because they've got Devin Leary, who I actually think is an upgraded quarterback over Will Levis, who is really good and just got picked by the Titans in the second round of the draft. So I'm going to say more for Kentucky, but Craig, your thoughts on what jumps out to you there?
All right, well, this is the very first time I'm seeing this, so I don't really have any formed thoughts. But yeah, I mean that's a fun line to play with A&M, that 8-4 game.
Right there,
like,
7.5.
That's the perfect number for them. It's like, yep, which side of the line do you want to play on for the Aggies? But that's perfect for them. Very interesting with Florida and Billy Napier now heading into year number 2. I think if they were to miss a bowl game, that would be a pretty tough pill to swallow for the Gators. So that's very interesting that they've got them hovering right on that bowl line there. I mean, there's a lot of, man, look at that top, though. 11.5, 10.5, 9.5, 9.5. Then everybody else just kind of hovering around that bowl line, right? But, yeah, I mean, I truly, I don't have any grand thoughts on this. That seems just on the surface to be, probably about what you would expect. But poor Vandy. That's all there by their lonesome.
I would think of all,
because I think LSU's going to 9.5 for Tennessee is interesting. I think because they are going to have some turnover, but maybe not to the extent that they can't replace it. With more talented players, I know there's a lot of hope about the young guys that'll be taking over. So I don't even have any really grand thoughts on this.
No, I'll tell you this. I think you start with 3 points on this if you're DraftKings and you're trying to bookmake this. You start with the top at Georgia, and you say, we know that Georgia is probably not going to, especially given Georgia's schedule this year, which is the easiest one they've had in a very long time.
Yeah.
So they're going to have 11 wins or more,
right.
No matter what.
That makes sense, yeah.
So then we go to the middle, and Texas A&M is the kings of 8-4, and they probably won't be 5-7 again. So this is pretty obvious. We don't have to do math on this. They're 8-4. That's what they are. So 7.5. That makes sense. And then you go to the bottom, and you're like, Vanderbilt. Well, what can we say for Vandy? Let's put them here. And then the hard work comes in the middle. but to go back to Florida for a second,
where 75% of the conference is all like within a game of each other. Basically, it's 8 of the 14 teams are all in that 7.5 to 6.5 range there.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Florida, you're going to be on the road at Utah to start off the season. They're not going to be favored in that game.
Man, Utah's playing Florida and Baylor right out the jump. That's going to be interesting.
Then you welcome Tennessee. You're not going to be favored in that game. You have a couple games in there where you might be. They will not be favored at Kentucky. And this is rare for the Gators. South Carolina, I don't know but that's at South Carolina. Georgia and the cocktail party, they're not going to be favored in that game. They've got Arkansas at home. Don't know at that game, and that one's more of a toss-up like South Carolina. At LSU, not going to be favored. Missouri, not going to be favored. And then they wrap up the regular season with Florida State, where probably not going to be favored in that one either. So you can see how they came to that 5.5 game total there for the Gators.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, these all seem very reasonable. I mean, I just haven't done a deep dive on the schedules, and I think that definitely, especially when you read out Florida like that, it definitely allows you to see the path to where 5.5 is certainly, fair to start off with. But, yeah, I'm trying to think of just who I would say. Garrett, do you have anybody that you're like?
I'm calling BS on Bama.
On Bama, okay, all right.
I'm not buying 10.5 wins for the Tide. Not with as much roster turnover. Even Tyler Buckner. I do not trust Tyler Buckner to come in there. That's one that really, I think that's just a benefit of pedigree and tradition. And nobody's thinking like, okay, Nick Saban can't have 2. Yeah, I mean, I'm calling BS on Bama.
Fair enough.
Yeah, look.
I think I'm just brainwashed to just deal with it, like just be like, no, it's that's Alabama. That's what they should. But I just glossed right over them at 10.5. But you're absolutely right. That is. I'm glad that we got you to interject there.
Yeah. Their last 3 weeks are, and not really a good stretch. I mean, I think Kentucky, like I said, is going to be good with Devin Leary, who I am amazed Alabama didn't go get. I really am. If he was in the portal and I'm Alabama, I would not have been like, oh, I've got Milroe and Stimson, I'm going to be great. I would have been like, no, we have Devin Leary, if you're going to just ultimately do this anyway. But, what do I know? I'm not Nick Saban, so.
That week 2 game with Texas will kind of set their path, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be very interesting in Tuscaloosa, so they do have that going for them. But, yeah, that week 2 could kind of put you on, all right, 10 or more or 10 or less, depending on how that one goes. That's going to be a great little contest to watch early on in the season.
I like the stretch of, for them, at A&M, which has been always kind of a challenging game for them, obviously, win or lose. Arkansas at home, Tennessee at home off, and then LSU at home, which that's a nice little draw there. Tennessee and LSU are both at home, but then again, they're Alabama. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's Bama. I mean, if they were to go undefeated, it wouldn't shock me necessarily. But, yeah, I do think there are some cracks in the armor for the first time in a while. And I know that people have been hoping for that or, manifesting that for years and years at this point. I'm sure there's a Saban will retire soon article out there somewhere published in the last week or something, and the culture's bad or whatever is going on. But I mean, it's kind of like the Pac-12 TV. Like eventually something's got to break one way or the other, right? And at some point the good times are going to stop rolling. I'm not ready to think that they're right now, but if you're not a full believer of like, they're just going to go reel off 10 plus wins again, I don't think that that's crazy at all. I think that that's reasonable. But you can still look at that schedule and give them the benefit of the doubt and go, they're going to win 11 games again, potentially. That's another. I mean, there's hundreds of storylines every year, and Alabama with Tyler Buckner at the helm, and however many years it is that Saban has remained, this team and the rise of Georgia as the backdrop to it all does make it a lot more interesting as well, because there's like a team that really is not just a threat, but they've now won back-to-back national titles,
and they don't have to play anybody.
Yeah. This year, no. Yeah, I mean, they don't. Crazy.
I mean, they're not even gonna feel a mosquito bite until the SEC championship game.
Yeah, potentially.
So that's why. Yeah, it's and that good for them. All right, Paxton says, "Do Big 12, Paul." Well, guess what? Ask and you shall receive. Thanks to Pete Mundo at Heartland College Sports for making this graphic, because we stole it from him. Over under win totals in the Big 12. You see Texas at 9.5, Oklahoma. Well, is that 8.5 there?
That's 9.5.
That's 9.5, man.
Sorry.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Pass the Dutchie to the left one time. Whoever put that.
Yeah. So hold on. I got my old man eyes here. I got to pull up the larger one on my screen here. But yeah, I don't. 9.5 for Oklahoma. I'm not buying that. 8.5 for Kansas State. Fine. 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5. I'll buy it all the way down the line where you've got it. I think Houston at 4.5 is maybe a little low.
Well, let's start off with Texas. 9.5. I mean, I could see that, but that Alabama game will be a real test early on. Beyond that, though, I do think they'll be favored in just about every single game they play. So, and I do feel like for the first time in a while, it's not just a bunch of fluff that there is with Quinn Ewers being back as your starting quarterback and all the offensive weapons, including the transfers that you brought in. I do think Bijan's a loss. Like, I don't think that they just pick up where he left off and Cedric Baxter and Jonathan Brooks are like just
generational.
Right. But I don't think that just losing him, like, that it like wrecks your season. Like you can't replace him in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I think 9.5 is very fair. I'm not even, what would I go here? I think I'd go over, but I don't know if I trust him enough just yet. But as we get closer to the season, maybe I will. I'm not buying Oklahoma at 9.5. I think they'll win less than that. I mean, I don't think they're not going to like make a bowl game or anything crazy like that. But I just don't have the faith at the moment to feel like they're going to approach 10 games. But they'll have more talent than everybody but Texas. They should be expected to win a lot of those games. But I don't. My faith's a little shaken after last year and all the changes. K-State at 8.5. That's very interesting.
I'll buy it. I mean, I like quarterback coming back. I like what they've done in the portal. I don't think that sets them up for 9-3. I think that's a.
And again, we're not looking at the schedules as we do this because that definitely would come into play too. But we just don't have the time to go one by one through every schedule. Tech won 8 last year, so I think I'd go over with them this year. I think that they're going to be right there near the top, and they're going to be all business. Baylor, I'd go under 7.5. I'm more of a 7 wins for them type of a guy. So that one, to me, I'd actually go under. TCU at 7.5. Ooh, that's interesting, too. I don't know what at all to expect from them because, like, you think they just reload.
Players just went to the NFL.
Like, I think I might go under there.
That's not Georgia.
And they also had, like, I mean, really, though, if anybody has a great season, in some cases it's just Georgia's just so much better than everybody else. But they had so many doses of luck last year when you think about TCU's season and how, I mean, the Baylor win. I mean, my gosh, that was 1 second away from being a loss. 1 second. The Oklahoma game, I mean, there's a lot of little instances last year that could have gone the other way for them. And that's, like Baylor 2 years ago when they had their magical season, a lot of people pointed out when they had the follow-up of expecting a downtrend was they lost a bunch of guys to the NFL and they won a bunch of close games. And sure enough, you turn around and they didn't win the close games most of the time, and they didn't have those talented NFL guys. So, yeah, I think I might go.
But shoot, man, what they do is
They got so many. I don't know. That's a tough one. I'd have to sit there and really stew on TCU.
Yeah, and look, they have.
I think I'd go over though.
Yeah, I might go a little over. But the other thing that kind of works out for TCU that Baylor did not have, Baylor was in the normal times of the schedule. One of the things that worked out for Baylor when they won the Big 12 and won the Sugar Bowl was all of those games, like the big ones, were at home. And then it flipped where all the big ones, except for TCU, were on the road.
TCU Colorado in week 1 is going to be really interesting. And then Colorado plays Matt Rule in Nebraska as well. So that Deion tenure is going to be, I know we've mentioned it before, that's going to be fascinating.
I don't know if he makes a bowl in year 1. I honestly don't.
Or he does, and it's like the story of the entire year. And if you were already sick of hearing about him, then guess what? Like it's only going to grow into a whole nother, monster of attention.
I can't wrap my head around the math right now, but again, we don't know what his roster is going to be.
Yeah, we don't know.
Nor does he.
No, he doesn't have the old picture either.
But yeah,
can you pop that back up? Sorry, Garrett. It's the Big 12. I think we should finish off the second half of that.
Baylor at 7.5. All right. I mean, like 8 home games. I'll give you that.
They should not make a bowl game. That's the one way I draw the line. But yeah, they got 8 home games. One of them's Utah, granted. But yeah, there should be some expectations this year. I don't know how I feel exactly about them. So I think I would go under with 7 wins right now for Baylor.
But I'll go. I'm not going to way under, but I think UCF at 7.5 is probably about right.
It's reasonable. Although, are we going to have like a little bit of a curve for some teams entering the Big 12 for the first time? But with John Rice Plumlee, maybe they don't have as much of an adjustment as some others do.
Yeah. Kansas, get back to a bowl game, maybe improve on it. Yeah.
It feels like that's a low for them, right? Yeah. Like almost feels like the juice that they have right now, that they should have like 7 up there or something. Yeah. I know it's not far off, but the fact that they're even getting 6.5 type of cred is speaks to the job that Lance Leipold's done. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oklahoma State at 6.5.
Who the heck knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know what they're going to look like. BYU, I would actually give them a little bit more. I know they have a tough schedule and all, but Keaton Slovis is not glorious when he's on his 3rd team, but he's also a little bit more experienced. So I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on that. But their schedule is hard at Arkansas, at Kansas, at TCU, Tech, Texas, going all the way across the country to Morgantown.
Even playing home games, you still got Oklahoma, still got Texas Tech, you got Cincinnati. So, I could definitely see them hovering right around that bowl line.
Yeah, so
I think I'd go over, but I could see the argument the other. That's why Vegas has. I mean, clearly Vegas knows right where the sweet spot is. So that's why they have them right at 6, and that seems fitting.
Yeah, and Iowa State there. I think they're about right. I could see them making maybe a big improvement this year, but then again,
nothing's going to be expected of them really.
It's got to be their offense has to score 28 points a game like a normal team can.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of in that quiet corner, sort of working in silence. I could get that vibe from them. And Hunter Deckers makes a jump, and the defense stays great as usual. And they have some good skill talent that develops. Although they're losing Will McDonough, they're losing Xavier Hutchinson, they're losing some pieces. So you don't exactly replace that right away necessarily at a school like an Iowa State or Baylor or any other number of schools. You don't have the Texas, Oklahoma just ability to hit the vending machine button and just another 5-star, 4-star guy pops up. But, I could see them surprising people or just kind of settling into this just sort of median spot where, they've kind of always been. But, obviously disappointing because it really felt like a couple years ago Matt Campbell had something – not like they were going to the national championship or anything crazy, but it felt like, they played for a Big 12 title, and I don't know really, I don't know these last couple, or at least coming off of last season, I don't really know what to expect with them.
Yeah. Houston, I kind of want to give them more of the
benefit
of the doubt.
Pretty low,
But in Cincinnati.
But they lost Alton McCaskill. Not that he was going to win them like 3 extra games, but that was a loss.
That was a huge loss, yeah.
I hate that because I really loved watching him play 2 years ago. I think he's got star potential, and it was a shame he got hurt couldn't play, and be an effective weapon for them last year. And then to have him all the way rehabbed and then to bounce after spring camp is just, that's brutal. That's so brutal.
Yeah.
But I think they can win more than 4.5.
Cincinnati, I'll keep it at 4.5. The Emory Jones is going to be their starting quarterback, and we just know.
Well,
I
think
what he is.
Yeah, just losing Luke Fickell, that's obviously a huge blow. If Luke Fickell was still the head coach, I'm sure that number would be a couple notches at the very minimum higher. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks right now for Cincy, so that's understandable if they're getting lowballed a little bit.
Yeah,
it's fun to look at. It's fun. I could sit there and look at that and really pour over it for much longer than we already have, which is pretty lengthy. But it's fun because it's starting to kind of feel like we have more of the picture taking shape for next year. Is checking off all these little boxes, whether it's a schedule release or whether it's classes settling in or the transfer portal, or it's just getting odds on the win expectations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did we skip West Virginia, Gregor Krug? Yes, we did. I think West Virginia has the toughest schedule in the Big 12. Not just in total number of tough teams that they have to play, but how it falls for them.
What were they at?
They were at, I believe, 4.5, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they were at 4.5.
We super over there.
Yeah, so West Virginia, and again, you've got a coach in turmoil there.
I mean, they open up with a layup at Penn State. So, yeah, that'll be tough on September the 2nd. Pitt in week 3, Tech at home, at TCU, at UCF, at OU, at Bay. At 4.5, is that what they said again?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I love that they've retooled. They do seem like they've retooled pretty well this offseason. But
did they just lose their best running back too? He just hit the portal last
he did.
week.
Yep,
after spring.
Yep, he did. Was
it C.J. Donaldson?
No. It was dadgummit, what's his name? It was the other
number 24.
Another running back we saw all the time. Tony Mathis is who hit the portal. Yeah.
But my point being in that, Penn State, Pitt, Tech, TCU, with Duquesne in there, I know in the middle, but that's a really hard way to start the season. Mm-hmm. That's a really hard way to start the season before you get to the bye.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Mathis coming off of last year, he'd only played in half their games. It seemed like he played in way more than that. No, he didn't. He played in way more than that. He played basically in every single game. That's a weird website. Anyways, that's going to be a little bit of a loss for them. Obviously, there's the talk about Neil Brown that's going to be kind of hanging around in the background. I don't know how much of an effect that has on the team, really. I don't know, though. I don't know how to feel about them. I don't feel like they're in store for some massive resurgence necessarily. I also don't think that they're a completely hopeless program either. So, yeah, they're kind of like right in that middle territory for me. But I love C.J. Donaldson. I do love that they're going to finally seemingly have maybe a bit more excitement at quarterback after – it's kind of been ho-hum the last couple of years, and they finally
they've been it's dry toast.
Yeah, but
that's what they had, dry toast.
But Mark Eel's exciting.
Garrett
Green. We've seen good things from him in the past, although not nearly enough through the air. But that gives you an exciting combination of guys that could do some damage for you. So. Yeah, I mean, I've seen mixed reactions from West Virginia fans. There seems like there is some wave of optimism, but there also is a little bit of hesitancy, and that's just kind of how I feel. I feel sort of split, but I would love for a West Virginia fan to tell me what the overall sort of real feeling is of that fan base, whether it's pessimistic or optimistic, to kind of give me a guideline to roll with and kind of know better what the fans out there are thinking, because I see a mixture of both on my timeline most of the time when they're brought up. So, yeah, I don't really know enough to feel like I'd be comfortable saying, oh, no, that's a for sure bowl team. I think 4.5 is probably, given the circumstances, about right. But I would go over on 4.5, to be clear.
Yeah. I'm going to say under. I really am.
You are? Okay.
I do. I think those first few games are going to eat them up. I do. And, I hope they're better for the sake of all of our Morgantown faithful that are watching this show.
We love the West Virginia fans.
Yeah, we love the West Virginia fans. I really do. Hope they're better, but it's just,
it's a tough schedule. It's a tough schedule.
It's a tough, they get it to where it kind of bounces out in the middle for a minute, but Then you got to go like big long road trips that are tough that you've never,
Okay, I could see them. Okay, they beat Duquesne, right?
Yeah.
Pitt, possible. I mean, is Morgantown as formidable as it used to be? Like I feel like it still can
it will
be.
And it will be that night against Pitt.
Yeah. Can it sway a couple games, like the Baylor game last year? Do they have a couple of those moments in them? Because they're going to need a couple of those moments to get to like a 6-win set. And do they have that in them? I don't know that or feel comfortable enough in predicting that. But yeah, I can see where there is some pessimism to be found given that schedule. And they avoid Texas, so there's that. But
but
there's a lot of other problems potentially on that schedule.
Yeah, and look.
So West Virginia fans, please give us the vibes coming out of Morgantown post-spring.
I mean, look, they could have done them a favor and sent Baylor to them where Baylor seemingly can't win.
Yeah, true.
But
automatic
no.
win.
But no, I mean, they, got to go to Norman. Like that's tough. We'll see. They go to Orlando. We'll see how that works out. But that's that middle stretch where it kind of balances out for them. But if say you are 1-4 out of the first 5, what's Neil Brown gonna be? What's his status gonna be at that bye week? Like that is
that's
that
entirely
bye week
possible,
for Neil Brown is gonna be very telling because if they're 1-4 and just beat Duquesne, then you think what's gonna happen to Neil Brown because they just got the new athletic director who. When he was on with us, and he's told us, look, he doesn't want to fire coaches, and I believe him. Nobody really wants to, but also he's been brought in to improve things, and you don't sell yourself to a guy you didn't hire. And so you're 1-4 in the first 5 weeks. That, to me, is where I just don't see it for them. But, look, you could –
I think a lot of this depends, but they get a lot of the new schools. Like if I'm looking for optimism here, they play UCF, they play Cincinnati, they play BYU. Cincy and BYU are at home. Houston on the road. I don't think that's like impossible. UCF on the road. I don't think it's impossible. I mean, they should have a leg up on those schools, you would think, being in the Big 12 the last several years. There should be, you would think, some slight advantage, personnel-wise or otherwise. So there's,
You think Dana's going to lose to West Virginia?
No, Garrett, I don't. But, I'm trying to be positive here.
I know.
Yeah. No, that one, you're right. That'll be circled and has been squared and rectangled and triangled on his calendar, I'm sure, 1,000 times already. But, yeah, you're right. That's another element to that game that certainly makes it different than just, going to one of the new schools for a little road trip. But, if you can handle those – and maybe knock off a couple, but yeah, we're like Duquesne. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going bowl game, but I'm going above 4.5. So right there at 5, I think is where I'd have West Virginia, which is I believe exactly where they were last year.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that would be great for Neil Brown.
No, it's not. It's not. We'll take a break right here. We'll come back. Last segment, kind of dive back in the chat room, see if there's anything we've missed. Here on the chat today, go back through and get that before we get to the top 5. This is 365 Sports.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Second to last segment of the show. JG Neil Ardo says, I think Dana loses against West Virginia. I don't know.
Hey, man, look, Garrett was right in bringing that up. I mean, that's a game I'm sure he's had circled, but I don't think it's just a foregone conclusion.
Sometimes you can hold on so tight to the bunny you kill it.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so I don't know. He might be, but yeah, Dana. You know, he even.
We don't know how Donovan Smith's going to work there. I mean, if he's the guy who's brilliant at times with like great athleticism and all that, like we saw in Lubbock on occasion, that he could win some games for him. But if he's the guy that makes some dumb decisions and turns the ball over, then he can lose some games for him. And he's not the only piece of the puzzle by any means, but that is a changeover they're making after having Clayton Tune these last few years. So you also lose Alton McCaskill; they're going to look a little bit different, and losing Tank Dell. Among others. So there's some turnover there for sure. And, I know West Virginia's been busy, adding where they can. So that's going to be an interesting game. I love that there's games like that I'm sure have always had sort of underlying storylines, and maybe there's just more of a focus now because there's shows like this that are talking about the Big 12 more. But I like that we're going to be able to have some of those subplots because I think that's what the SEC has a lot of the time is those stories besides just the game itself.
Well, you got Saban against everybody who's ever coached with him.
All of his former assistants that are head coaches now. Yeah.
But this was. When you were at Baylor practice, I'm sorry you didn't get to take part in that interview, but when we had Coach Holgerson on, Craig, he said, of course, they threw West Virginia on the schedule. I kind of knew they were going to do that.
Had to.
But at least for them in year one, where it probably has the most intrigue, as it goes on, that'll wane because he'll have been at Houston way longer than he was in Morgantown. But it is in Houston. So he didn't have to go to Morgantown on a Thursday night. They did that small little favor for him. But I do think that when he does, whenever year that is, maybe next year, we don't know. The schedule's going to be completely different. This is a one-off schedule. But when Dana Holgerson that first time goes back into West Virginia, given how he went out the door there, that is going to be a tough night for Houston. Whether they win or lose that game, the first part of that is going to be loud.
Oh, yeah. It'll be formidable for sure. And I'd expect nothing less from the fine folks out there. They have every right to feel that way just because of the way it ended and, to, at the time, spurn a current Big 12 school for seemingly, and I don't feel this way because now Houston's right at, eye level with them, but at the time, it was kind of looked at as like, dude, you're taking a step down from one of the Power Fives, and I know there's mixed feelings on Power Fives and all that, but everybody knows what I'm getting at here. So, to not just walk away, but to walk away for a job that seemingly was looked at as slightly inferior, that's a slap in the face. It's not like you went and you was like, hey, I'm going to Florida State. It's like, you're going to the non-Power 5 school. Like, what the heck? And so
at that time, there was not. I mean, Houston was planning to get in whenever they could, but the Big 12 wasn't sitting there looking around saying, here's the merit badge you can have.
Yeah, and so I get the Texas ties and all that and the benefits of it. Like, we all understood that part of it, but still, if you're a West Virginia fan, absolutely it's a slap in the face. And just, in general, that wasn't the only thing, but, that all adds up, and that's the way that it ends. And sure enough, you better have a pretty fiery crowd the next time he walks into that building and ready to tear him a new one and hopefully hand him an L on the way out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Roger Dodgers by the pool and asking who wants a pina colada. I mean, I feel like that's an empty offer, but, I'm not going to say no. So
it's steamy out here right now. That actually sounds like it's pretty perfect at the moment.
Yeah. Let's see. Paxton asked me, Paul, what do you think at Florida State at 9.5? Yeah. 10-2. Look, if they're 10-2, that's not going to shock me because they have both Clemson and LSU on the schedule in the first 5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, they'll start off 0-1.
Yeah. I don't know. Garrett, look, you don't even realize the beehive that you're about to walk into. I don't know. That's
Florida State's back. Here's cocky Paul.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't. Like, I got cocky. I'll tell you, after that Jameis Winston in 2014, that year I was super cocky because they pretty much brought everybody back, or maybe even improved. Like, Devontae Freeman was gone, but they replaced him with Dalvin Cook. So I was like, fine, great. Everything's going to be wonderful. All these guys are back. Like, it's been great. And the whole year, they didn't lose until they lost to Oregon, but the whole year was white knuckling that, they half-ass it the entire first half. And then the second half, they come out and sober up seemingly and then beat somebody. They were like, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Archer, where it's like he's a spy, but he's a big drunk, and then for whatever reason, whatever ridiculous chances he takes work, and that's what happened that year until the Oregon game. And the Oregon game was setting up just that way until that ridiculous fumble, and then after that, their luck had run out. But yeah, I'm not going to be. If they beat Clemson in Death Valley and beat LSU, then cocky Paul, you'll just
better
see,
win the Natty if they do that.
Yeah, you'll just see a divide, where a different part of me comes out and locks the nice guy away.
Well, that would be two huge wins. That'd be somewhat understandable. But yeah, Mike Norvell's done a good job, and they're set up really well for this year. So there's absolutely dozens of reasons to feel pretty good. Just so long as Dion doesn't poach half their roster before they actually roll around to game number one. But,
yeah, well, thankfully the portal's closed, but all those guys are probably going there. He's already got 3 or 4, so.
You lean on your connections, man.
Yeah,
so
look,
don't blame him.
I'm not mad at it, especially if they replace one of the guys with the guy who's there this weekend. I think is a potential upgrade. So we'll see. Keon Coleman from Michigan State visiting there this weekend. That would, if he commits, that would give Jordan Travis 3 starting receivers over 6'4", plus Jaheim Bell at tight end, which is going to be matchup nightmares for defenses all over the place before you even get into the running backs that they have like Trey Benson and so yeah, this is starting to. It could work out well, or it could completely blow up. So I'm one who's learned over the years, enjoy it along the way, but be realistic about it, and we'll see. But yeah, if you beat LSU in Orlando on the neutral site, and then you beat Clemson in Death Valley, nobody else should really be in your way other than yourself, in my opinion. But they could wind up playing Clemson twice. That's the other thing that's scary, because now in the ACC, they've gone to divisionless. That's like the Big 12. They're divisionless. So, okay, say they do beat Clemson in Death Valley. You better hope that wounded them enough to where you don't have to see Clemson again, because I'd much rather, as good as I think Drake May is going to be next year, I'd much rather see North Carolina for a first time than Clemson for a second.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it depends a lot on how Clemson looks. I mean, I think there's still questions about them too that we don't quite know just yet. So, was the beginning of their demise is far too heavy of a word, but people waiting for them to unravel a little bit got a little bit of that last year, and whether that continues or not, now they've cleared up the quarterback position and Klubnik's going to be the guy. I'm really excited to see him and what he can do there as QB1. So yeah, I don't know, other than I know they'll win a lot of games, but will they win more than Florida State, or will they be able to take that matchup? I don't know. That should be great. That's what we're all looking forward to here in a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paxton asked if Florida State and Texas have played. They've never played. So
not once.
Not once. Not once.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The little baby cows don't want any of that smoke.
What? At Paul Catalina on Twitter.
No, not like, I actually think that the only times, because if you look at the way that Florida State was not good, like when Texas was at its actual peak of greatness in the 60s and 70s, Florida State was total garbage. That was pre-Bobby Bowden. And then when Bobby Bowden got there, and then in the 80s when he built the dominance, Texas was not going to play them. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Now, Bobby was playing anybody, anytime, anywhere. So if Texas is called and said you want to play, he probably would have. But because that was the scheduling philosophy before they got in the ACC and when they were major and independent. But Texas was not like under the David McWilliams and Fred Akers runs. They weren't doing that. And that was also the time in the Southwest Conference where the conference started to implode on itself because all they cared about what was going on in Texas. That was it. They didn't care about anything else. They didn't care about anyone else. And then you saw all these other programs start to shoot to the moon because like Nebraska and Miami back then were like, okay, we very much care about what each other are doing, and we're not in the same conference, but we're going to play each other, and we'll find out at the end of the year. So those are the things that were happening then. So that's kind of how it worked out. I think, honestly, it's probably in the offing in the future sometime, the way the scheduling's going, where big-time TV matchups are going to be if
they're in the playoffs, I would think that they'd probably cross paths. I just didn't know they'd never played before, but yeah, that seems like it'd be a pretty good draw on TV. Would be FSU and Texas, so maybe they'll be conference mates here in the next few years, for all we freaking know at this point.
Yeah,
that's entirely possible.
Yeah, we had some talk on the chat room about the Super League. Connor Johnson brought it up. I think he had to go, but the Super League, he said, well, what if like English Premier League fans, everybody got together and said, we don't want this. I don't know. And look, the Super League is eventually going to happen in some form as well. So
yeah, I mean,
in Europe.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that was much more of a thing that felt like it was close to happening when there was still all the uncertainty with the Big Ten. And now that's sort of died down. It's not as much of it's just not on the radar as much, I think, right now, because you're still trying to figure out some of these other pieces to the side. And then once those are cleared up, then maybe things start to head in that direction. I mean, certainly the revenue gap indicates there's going to be that. But as far as like an official breaking off and what all that would entail, I think you're dealing with a lot of politics, buddy. You want to talk about like just simply the Pac-12 sticking together because of academics or, the school presidents or whatever. I mean, imagine trying to break off entirely. That's going to be messy in some form or fashion. So I don't think that that's like inevitable or in the immediate future. But years and years down the road, or just a few years down the road, I mean, I can't rule that out because I'm definitely not, in possession of what the future looks like exactly. And all the signs point to, that being feasible. I just don't know how realistic it really is, because even the people we've talked to are like, oh, yeah, no, the gap's huge and it's never going to go back. And these teams are going to be so far ahead of these others. They'll still scoff at the idea that they'll just not play any of these other teams anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Bob Thompsons or whoever, like, oh, no, they'll still play all the, like, Oklahoma State's not going to vanish because the SEC and the Big Ten aren't playing, these other. So I don't know. I don't think it's in the near future them just breaking away and it's these 32 teams like the NFL and everybody else just can fend for themselves. But something sort of like that is definitely that's shaping up to be that way.
Well, yeah,
sure.
look, the way like the Premier League, like I know that people want a relegation model too. like the Premier League, I don't like that either. So
I mean, it sounds like that would be fun, but like that's just a lot of drama and a lot of just uncertainty to be playing around with for a lot of these universities. I just don't know that that's all that realistic either.
It's different when it's, your company, the English soccer teams are owned by private business people.
Yeah.
That's a little different than when you're talking about universities of all varying backgrounds and things. So it's a little bit different, but I've gotten a little bit into English Premier League lately.
Oh boy. Okay.
I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, post it on Twitter like, go Tottenham.
I mean, you can be. That's fine. There's a lot of people that do that.
I am enjoying it, following it along. It's just it's cool to me. I'm dying to just go. I would love to go to England for like a month and
I think
immerse myself in it.
The concept of like Champions League and all the various leagues, La Liga and Premier League and, so on and so forth. I think it's Bundesliga. I think it's all very cool. Like I had a friend who was very deep into it and explained a lot of it to me, and all that's neat. I just don't know if that's necessarily what we're, barreling towards with college football. Because if anything, we're going to 2 leagues and there's all these multiple leagues that make up, that. But no, it's cool. The pageantry is as close, I think, to college football as what you could find in any other sport. That's what kind of strikes, just the pride level and the personal. Like I know NFL fans are hardcore and NBA fans are hardcore and stuff, but there's just a different element to like college football, and I feel that same way about soccer overseas.
I think that's how it's the same kind of fan base. Like the team for your town is that's your team from birth, and so it's just right there with you, a lot like your university. I will say this: in Italy, Napoli just won for the first time in forever in Naples, and I just thought like, what an amazing thing to be like a 25-year-old soccer player who just won the title.
Oh no, I've thought about that a million times. Yeah,
like
that might be better than
your life is pretty freaking awesome right now.
I think I would trade that for QB1 for the Buccaneers or whatever. I think I'd rather be the 22-year-old hotshot, AC Milan star or Liverpool or Man U or whoever else. Yeah, I definitely would go down that pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, when we come back, the top 5. This is 365 Sports.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Top 5 things to follow following these CFB meetings. Sorry, I got to put the cheaters on. You know, there's a lot of great things going on in my life in my 40s, but this is not one of them.
It's just glasses.
Yeah, no, it's just annoying. I used to be able to look at something, words on a page, and read it, and now there's like a step I have to take. So I think I look good now. It's just annoying to have to worry about where they are all the time. Number 5, does ESPN stay out of the Pac-12? Right now they're out. Dennis Dodd reported that an ESPN executive in a meeting said the 3 teams, their conferences we're going forward with are the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12. And that's true today. But do they stay out of it long term? I'll be interested to see, because the only thing I see them getting back in is they've got to fill something, and the Pac-12 is the best option. But I feel like that may have already happened if that was the case.
Yeah, I have no idea on this one. I mean, obviously there's conflicting reports yesterday, but you kind of read between the lines, and they're not so conflicting. But just taking it, on the surface, you could see we're like, oh, that's the exact opposite of what was said. But there's a little bit, more into the language of this is the way it was worded, could be taken differently, right? But yeah, I don't know if they do or not. I guess if I had to just venture a guess, I'd think that somehow they come up with having a late night game just because it makes some sense. But to answer this question, no idea. And that would obviously be a pretty important storyline to this, because if you have ESPN, then that answers a couple of questions about your distribution and having the linear and, things like that. Without them, well, that just, amplifies some of the questions that are already out there.
Yeah. Number 4, what noise comes out of the Pac-12 after this week? Do we get another couple weeks in and people start squawking a little bit more, or do they get quieter? What happens? I'm curious to see. It seems like every time there's one of these, benchmark, this is the meetings for this, or this is the thing for this, we start to hear,
keep your eye on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday, nothing happens whatsoever.
Yeah, we start to hear that stuff. So I'm curious to see, is there a keep your eye on Tuesday, or on June 10th, that's when something's going to happen.
I don't know that anybody's confident enough to throw out any hard dates right now, clearly, because when there's been attempts to, it typically just kind of comes and goes. But no clue what the meetings create. But I know that there is lots of noise, and that's not going to cease until there's somebody there to shut off that noise. So I think that only grows. But does it grow to a level where people feel the need to speak out again? No idea. I do think it's become very clear, though, that, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, whenever it's been at this point, and tell me if it's been shorter than that, but we were getting these quotes that were pretty adamant about all this Big 12 propaganda and all this stuff, and not a damn thing has changed since that, it's right around the corner and blah, blah, blah. And so, that's the part of it where, when people who want to, cite the fact that, there's still another year on the deal and all that. But the expectations came from the people talking themselves. If you didn't say anything about it, and the deal's just coming up next year, then okay, the deal's just coming up next year. I wouldn't think twice about it, but it's the fact that there have been multiple times now where it's like, it's close. Not only is it close, it's going to be better than the Big 12, or it's a good shot that, this is going to happen or whatever. So maybe it's just best if everybody just kind of shuts up for a little while on any side and lets this thing play out. But I know that's probably the most unlikely thing to happen.
Number 3. Do meetings that happen, so if you hear, like, this school met with this conference or whatever, do they mean anything right now, or are they just meetings? Because sometimes they're just meetings. And so I put more weight to them as we get closer to this television deal happening or not happening, but also just because schools are meeting does not mean anything's going to happen, so I would not get too excited or too depressed one way or the other, depending on how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think there's just the exploratory part of certain conversations, and you just want to hear some answers and figure some things out and find out if it's like going out on a date and figuring out if it's the right person for you or not. I think there's some element of that to that. You maybe find out, like, what, we're not so compatible. That was cool though, cool talking to you. We're gonna stay where we are with who we're with, versus, what, you're making a lot of sense. I like your vision. I think your outlook for the future is dead on with the way that I'm thinking about the future, and then that takes you a different direction. So meetings don't necessarily mean that something's happening, but they could, and then again they couldn't. So yeah, I think it just all depends on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. Number 2, and this is very hypothetical, but did the Big Ten actually save the Pac-12 in saying that they're not really interested in expanding right now? And now they all qualified. Like Tony Patini.
I was going to say, they didn't say that exactly.
But like the Illinois president's like, we're not focused on expansion right now. It's all this.
It's not a major focus.
Major focus. But I actually think that the Big Ten, there's 2 things to this. Maybe they're actually genuinely not interested in it right now, and they've got what they want, and that's it. Or they just don't want to be the one to completely sink the league. Right. They're going to wait on somebody else to do it and be like, well, look, if everybody's at the buffet, we'll eat too.
Yeah, I would say no, because they're the ones that started this whole ball rolling in the first place. So no, they didn't. They just created the entire situation. Sort of like if it's like asking, did the SEC actually save the Big 12 by taking Oklahoma and Texas, but not taking anybody else? No, they created the entire problem to begin with, or they exacerbated the problem and finished the problem off to where, left everybody in limbo there for a few weeks. But no, I think you're asking this because are they saving them by not going and getting anybody else? Potentially, but they're, again, the ones that started the cracks in the foundation. If you believe those are there or not, they're the ones that got that started.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's true. But like they do hold like the.
If they wanted to, if they really wanted to, just if they felt like killing mode. They wanted to go, slice a conference in half. They could go invite a couple schools and just be done with the entire thing. But I don't know, have any insight whatsoever. You read a lot of people who feel like they're fine where they are, welcoming in new leadership, and it's not a major focal point of theirs. And there's still a lot, of chatter and people that believe the same thing we were talking about like a year ago with Oregon and Washington, and that's still, very much alive and all of that. And the truth is, I have no idea. I think we all agree that if the Big Ten wanted to go grab anybody, they could very well do that and would do that. But whether they want to or not, that's the question that nobody really has the right and one sole answer to, and that we're all just kind of wondering about. Yeah.
And number 1, is this phase 1 of a shakeup or the end game? Like, just, are we looking at a minor shakeup, or are we looking at the end game? Like, what are we looking at? Or is it nothing? But I do wonder if this is, because we talked about it earlier, it seems like we've whittled down a lot of the like extraneous possibilities, and there's very few roads that the Pac-12 can take at this point.
Yeah, phase 1 of it. It's clear there's been a shakeup for sure. I think we're maybe even a couple phases into that at this point, but I don't know what the end game.
Or is this phase 1 of the end game? Maybe I didn't phrase it right. Is this phase 1 of the end game?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not gonna be the one to predict the future of college sports because, man, it's just so up in the air about what that could look like. It could look very similar to what we already have right now, which is a couple of tweaks. It could look, for the more extreme thoughts of the Super League, for example, it could look drastically different than it does right now, to where there's like truly like different levels more than there already are different levels with, FCS, FBS. I mean, we're talking about like a whole new part of that. But I don't know. There's just part of me that while all that makes sense, the whole, soccer style, doing of things, I think a lot of it depends on the NIL stuff. I think a lot of it depends on some of those topics that we're not at all sure about what direction those are going.
One of the things is that I think this is probably the 5 years from now conversation, but after what would be 7, 8, 9, 10 years of name, image, and likeness, what schools are really in the market to be able to do that, what want to commit to it, and what want to bail out, because that's what's also going to lead to the Super League kind of a thing, is that there may be schools that be like, look, we just can't. We don't have it. If you guys want to run this way, that's fine, but the economics of this don't make sense for us anymore. Right. So something has to be different. And so that's going to be a big deal too. Like the NIL part of it is going to be huge because, there's going to be, fair wages across the board. I don't know. There's so many different ways it could go, but yeah, that's going to be, what universities have to decide is like, do you really want to run with this? Can you run? Like if you decide that you're going to be big time in college athletics, especially football and men's basketball, in the major revenue sports, if you're going to be big time, do you want to decide that you have to do it like Georgia does it? Because the only way that you can compete with them is to spend the money that they get or to find the money that they have. And that's just not how money works. You can't just decide you have something. You either have it or you don't. Or you want to allocate it or you don't. So that's going to be interesting. Stanford's one to me that's going to be really interesting in the future in that they were so dominant in so many athletics for so long, but now when you're talking about paying athletes, and they're not going to change their standards to get more athletes in, they're still going to have the same ones. How many elite guys do they lose that are deciding not to go to Stanford because they can make $150,000 a year going to a different school? Like that's going to be interesting, especially on the Pac-12 side of it as we move forward.
Yeah, I think it's less about the guys who choose that. I think it's about what the schools can choose to do, because I think a lot of the guys who go to Stanford are thinking about the long-term picture to begin with. They're not thinking about the quick 150 they can make going to, wherever. They're thinking about the millions they can make with that Stanford degree. So I think those cats are bred a little bit differently than maybe, others making decisions to go places for whatever variety of reasons. But to your point, does the school want to invest? And they've got more money than, God. But, do they want to put a large amount of that large amount into paying players? Like, I don't know. Then that, that could lead to questions about just the whatever lifeboat you find right now. Is that still inflatable 10 years from now? And what does that look like? That's, again, the mystery that we're all kind of trying to unravel.
Well, the other problem is that because they have standards, even if they're going to pay, their field is still smaller. So you're going to have to, because there's guys who could go to Stanford that have decided already to go to Notre Dame, and they don't care about Stanford. They're going to want to play football at Notre Dame, so that you're just not going to get that guy. So there's a guy who's not going to go there because he's never wanted to go there. And it's not like if you're Notre Dame, you can just go back into this big pool, or Georgia, you can go back in this big pool. Stanford's pool is, and Notre Dame is probably the worst example, but Georgia, you got this different pool that you're wading in as far as talent goes as well. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Ross Dellinger, Dennis Dodd, Smokey for doing that interview. Also, Grayson Grundhay for all of you on the chat room who watched and listened. We're back again on Monday, of course, same bat time, same bat channel, and Sports Tonight, 10:30 on the CW. Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the